but it's all the Ramonas who don't like the truth. They just find reasons to have an argument with something. They don't do facts.
But also, I'm going to say yesterday, the release of the hostages, including Emily Tomorrow, I was in tears.
Me too.
Some of the footage they're coming out of Gaza, oh my God. And again, the justifications for people, they look well fed. Oh yeah, they've had a great time for the last
really unbelievable,
471 days.
And then, of course, there's Jeremy Corbyn and John McDonnell, who wanted to demonstrate outside the synagogue yesterday. Julia Hartley-Brewer is coming next. I'll see you tomorrow at 6. And don't forget, the Inauguration Day.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
A very, very good Monday morning to you. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. This is Talk, the home of common sense. Of course, very much appreciate you joining me, whether you're listening on DAB Plus Radio or on your smart speaker, watching on YouTube or your connected device. It's so great to have your company today. And what an important day. Events happening later today, very much going to be dominating. Also, events that happened yesterday, incredible events. We're going to be talking about all of that in the next few hours. So, crucially, obviously, Donald Trump is going to be sworn in for a historic second term as the 47th president today. The 78-year-old is the oldest president to be signed in, to take the oath of office. He's going to reclaim the White House with a promise to sign over 100, possibly even 200 executive orders on day one on everything from border control to net zero to trans rights. My God, we could do with a bit of that over here, could we not? Also, of course, I'm sure you joined me in really emotional moments yesterday, watching those 3 Israeli hostages, Romy Gonen, Doron Steinbrecher, and British Israeli Emily Tomorrow being freed and reunited with their families as part of that ceasefire deal. Later on, late last night, 90 Palestinian prisoners were released in return. And, of course, the ceasefire so far is holding. But is it a permanent peace? We'll talk about all of that. And today also is the start of the trial of Axel Ruda-Cubana over the Southport attacks. That's due to begin today at Liverpool Crown Court. The 18-year-old has been charged with 16 offences, including the murder of 3 young girls, the attempted murder of 10 others, including 8 children, as well as the production of ricin and possession of an Al-Qaeda training manual. This is Talk. Welcome, as I say, to the home of common sense. Welcome also to our commentator, as regularly on a Monday, Sam Armstrong. A very, very good morning to you.
Good morning.
I want to start by being positive and looking ahead to what's going to happen today in America. We're always downstream of America, the good stuff and the bad stuff. Oh, fingers crossed, fingers crossed. Now, look, I've been very clear ahead of the election, and I think, you know, if it was up to me, if I was an American, I'd have voted for Trump this time. I wouldn't in 16 and I wouldn't in 20. This time around, absolutely nothing to discuss. I'd have voted for him. I am very excited about what he may do. He's talked about these executive orders on day one. I mean, declaring an emergency at the border, you know, closing the border with Mexico, I mean, deporting illegal migrants. I mean, what's not to like? Basically designating drug cartels as foreign terrorist organisation. That works with me. Ending DEI hiring practices in the federal government. So basically you can't be hired just because you're black or you're lesbian or trans or whatever. Withdrawing from the Paris Climate Accord, dropping all of the net zero madness, drill baby drill. Getting men out of women's sport. Love that. A DOGE, Department of Government Efficiency, hiring freeze. Ain't hiring anybody. They're going to be sacking people en masse from the central government. People working in person. If you work for the government, you are going to turn up to work every day. I mean, what's not to like, Sam?
We're back, baby. We're back. And what I love about this is each and every one of these steps. Can you imagine if it happened in British politics? How much hand-wringing over just one of these steps? And
the American media is going to go crazy over most of this.
But what does Donald Trump do? He says, right, every single thing I want to do, every single controversial decision, every single thing that the media are going to tear their hair out, kick off about, I'm going to do them all at once in one big go, say, screw them, we're doing it, we know how this country ought to be governed, this is what we want to do, we've got an agenda, and we ain't wasting a minute of time.
And he's got the mandate, he's got that victory, and he's not just got the victory of the White House, he's also got control of Congress as well, both houses, okay, by a small margin in one case, but, you know, he's also got the Supreme Court, because he was able to, in his last term, to appoint 3, I mean, unprecedented, appoint 3 judges. So he's got a majority in the Supreme Court as well. Now, we're going to have a lot of hysteria from the sort of, you know, the pussy hat people who demonstrated last time, that in 2016, that you know, he's being a dictator for a day. And this was a joke he'd made in a speech. Again, they've got to stop taking him literally. Look, the stuff he says that I really hate, I'm honest about. There's no politician for which I hold my, you know, heart on my sleeve for every single thing that, you know, I'm really good friends with Nigel Farage. I'll still criticise him for the stuff I don't like that he says, you know. But they'll be saying, oh, he's going to be dictator for a day with executive orders. Yeah, Joe Biden got into office and his mandate, such as it existed, was to be like a little calm voice of reason and get everything back a bit calmer and be a kind of centrist. He went in full on day one, like the trans madness, the net zero madness. Again, all executive orders. Watch the same media organisations in America and here who went, oh, thank goodness Joe Biden has done this. Lose their minds today when Donald Trump does exactly the same. This is a constitutional power that the president has in various areas. Now, I would support him doing all of these things. I think we're going to, I'm guessing, the pendulum has gone just way too far, the Democrat map. I mean, untenably so. I think it's probably, for me, going to swing too far the other way. Maybe other people will be happy, but it's necessary. We're going to have to do this.
And Julia, look, I find their tears, I find their cries today funny. And I'll tell you why they're funny. Because each and every one of these executive orders is basically reversing an executive order that President Biden made. And look, this is how it works in America. Some of this stuff you can do by executive order. Some of it you have to get through Congress. And by the way, the American people voted to fill all 3 branches of the federal government, Congress, Senate, the presidency, with a Republican on the back of a MAGA agenda. That's what they want. And boy, why shouldn't they want it?
And they knew what they were getting. It's not like, they didn't know. No, he'd already been president. I mean, he has got a mandate.
And they'd thrown everything they possibly could at the guy, right?
Taylor Swift. left.
Taylor Swift.
How did she not swing the election for Kamala?
They tried to indict him 4 separate times in different places, and some of those indictments were just flagrantly, blatantly
some
political.
of them were completely banked rights. Sorry.
But some of them were
He's
political.
a convicted felon now.
Well, but the American public looked at that and they said,
they don't care.
do you know what? We like that guy.
This is my thing. Whenever you get anyone of the Democrats and the left here, your Rory Stewart's, Alice Cooper, whenever they say, I can't believe people have done this. It's like, you did this. You created him in the same way you created reform and Macron has created Marine Le Pen and all of that. You've done this because you are so bad. You are so awful. You go against so many of the basic instincts of normal, law-abiding, hard-working citizens. Democrats. They are properly insane.
Yep.
There's stuff I massively disagree with on the Republicans, on gun rights and things like that. I really, really do. And on abortion and things like that. However, the net zero thing, the DUI stuff, the equality. Again, it's not equality; it's inequality. It's racial. It's basically racializing every hire and the like. And freedom of speech and censorship and just really basic stuff. I think and the immigration issue. Democrats are totally out of touch with ordinary Americans, as are the Labour Party here in the UK. Do you think Keir Starmer will see... if Donald Trump does well and the economy booming, bearing in mind the US economy has done better than pretty much any other Western economy since lockdown, when they've got cheap, affordable energy.
Yep.
They think their prices are too high at the moment. Whoa, Keir Starmer, Ed Miliband, hold my beer, right? We are off the scale. Germany is in crisis on their energy prices. They're losing manufacturing hand over fist. They, by the way, are the powerhouse economy of Europe. When they are literally going down the tubes right now. At this point, the EU is going to become an economic backwater. Yep. We're kind of, still quite tied to them, certainly if Starmer has his way. Do you think Keir Starmer and Rachel from Accounts will look at any point in the next couple of years at what Donald Trump does and what happens to the American economy and to American society and think, maybe we should do some of that?
Do you know what? I think this is one of the most dangerous times to have this particular mob in Downing Street ever. We have got a golden opportunity to get on with America at a time where, as you say, it is booming and our previous trading partners in Europe are in comparative economic stagnation and decline. And yet what have we done? We have sent to America Peter Mandelson, a man who has repeatedly denounced Donald Trump in the most strident terms, in the rudest possible terms, instead has spent the last few years cozying up to China, a dictatorial, genocidal regime, and we have sent him out there to make a trade deal, have a relationship? Yep. No, he is as unpalatable as possible. There is prospect that he could even be rejected by Donald Trump as our ambassador.
And again, he has the right to do that. You have to accept the credentials.
And by the way, if you think that Donald Trump is too scandalous to hold high political office, Peter Mandelson
resigned
really?
Twice. I wrote the very first article about him having a house in Notting Hill that he couldn't possibly afford on his income, and he lied to the then editor of the Evening Standard, Max Hastings, and said, "Look, you dropped the street. Look, the money was from my family." He literally lied, which is why everyone went for him afterwards, because he basically got a story killed by lying about it. So unlike Peter Mandelson, but also big mates with Jeffrey Epstein. By the way, after. There are reports clearly after he had been convicted of sex trafficking an under-18 girl. Sorry. What is in your judgment, mate?
This man is well known as one of the sleaziest members of the British political establishment, and yet he keeps surviving. He keeps going out there. But if there was any job for which he was unsuited, this is it.
Couldn't agree with you more. Listen, I'd love to hear from you guys today. I really want to know from you what you make of the inauguration today. He's going to be sworn in, Donald Trump, for his second term as US president. He's promised to sign more than 100 executive orders within hours on some of the things we've been talking about and many more. I want to know from you, what are your hopes, maybe even your fears, Or maybe like me, you've got both for this Trump presidency. I would say mine are like 90% hopes, I've got to be honest with you. Give us a call. I want to hear from you. 0344 499 1000. You can text the word talk, then your message to 87222. Send us a message on X at Talk TV. Calls are charged at the national rate. Text costs one standard network rate message. What are your hopes or indeed fears? I want to give you options, whatever you want to say, for this Trump presidency. Are you incredibly excited? Do you think there'll be anything that the British political establishment will learn from what he's doing and is going to do? My God, I hope they would, but I don't have any faith at all that would happen. What are your thoughts? 0344 499 1000. Let's also talk about big events yesterday. The 3 Israeli hostages freed: Emily Damari, British-Israeli dual citizen, Romy Gonen and Doron Steinbrecher. I watched, I have to say, I was sitting on the sofa just watching this footage all day. Incredibly moving. I don't know about anyone else. As a mum, as a mum of, a girl not her age not that dissimilar to some of these girls, every mum I know was messaging each other going, God, imagine if that was us. 471 days in captivity. We know Emily Damari, she had her hand shot and a shot in her leg as well when she was taken captive on October the 7th. She's lost 2 of those fingers, it would appear. The family say, look, we're just going to be with her quietly. We're not making statements. We are going to be talking later in the show to the brother-in-law of none of the hostages who's still being held captive, because there are still 94 hostages still being in Gaza. Probably around 60 of them, we hope, still alive. Hopefully the little 2-year-old and 5-year-old boys, brothers, we hope against hope. But we also saw 90 Palestinian prisoners returned. We also saw horrific scenes at the handover in Gaza by the Hamas fighters, who've suddenly rediscovered that apparently they do have uniforms, which is weird, isn't it? Because for all this time, they'd been hiding in civilian clothing in Gaza and then going, oh, you shot civilians. Yeah, that's because the guy with the gun was dressed as a civilian. Suddenly, no, we've got balaclavas, bandanas, we've got you. Oh, we're all sorted. Climbing all over the Red Cross van. I mean, showing some of the footage now. A mob of, probably a couple of thousand, mostly men, baying mob, jeering at these 3 girls. My thing is that there are so many people in this country, including people who marched on Saturday, yet another march. Oh, it's not for a ceasefire now, pro-Palestine. It's now for a permanent peace. They're going to carry on marching. They love their marches. Got nothing better to do on a Saturday than intimidate Jews in our capital city. But genuinely, you look at that footage, you're on the side of the guys in balaclavas carrying guns. I'm on the side of the 3 terrified women desperately trying to get to the Red Cross van so that they can get home to their families after 471 days. How do people end up on the wrong side of this battle?
These aren't even men. These are dogs. These are beasts. These are monstrous creatures, cretins, disgusting. Those were terrified girls. They were cheering, they were shouting, and all of a sudden, now that the big bad IDF can't come after us, now we're not too scared to wear a uniform.
Yeah.
There were scenes yesterday of people posting on TikTok of them taking off press journalist outfits and putting back on Hamas outfits. And we've been told throughout this conflict, journalists are getting killed by the IDF. No, they weren't. Anybody that said that should be ashamed of themselves for denigrating what it means to put on a journalist's uniform in the midst of conflict. Every one of these men, these disgusting dogs that held these young, scared women prisoners to hide from the IDF, to block them, to protect themselves, is disgusting. Men who capture women and use them as human shields are dogs. They need to be run down the streets. And the only thing that tinges me with sadness at those scenes yesterday is that each and every one of those men, you ask me, they need to be shot, they need to be killed. There won't be peace.
Every one of them out.
There won't be peace in Gaza until they are all gone.
And that's the thing. There's not going to be peace in Gaza because they're not all going to be gone. And Hamas want to stay in power. There is no, Tory Lib Dem coalition moderate government in the wings. Not happening. Even the moderates, they're not moderate. They all want Israel and Jews wiped from this planet. That's not moderate. But also, Israel can't agree to that. They're not going to. I don't see where this goes. Do you think that the handing over, last night it was 90 Palestinian prisoners largely, they say women and children, 17-year-olds. And lots of those actually, some of them were detainees, people who've never actually been tried. Now, Israel is in a war zone. They are. And we would do exactly the same and have done exactly the same when we have been at war. So let's all stop pretending and clutching our pearls at that. But again, it doesn't help Israel that is the case. A very large chunk of those prisoners who are going to be released in total in return, if they do get all the hostages back, will be mass murderers, terrorists, people who planted bombs that killed dozens of people, rapists, really nasty, nasty pieces of work. And what's extraordinary is, Hamas want those people back. Which tells you quite a lot, doesn't it? They're our best people. Is the price that Israel is paying too high? Because I worry that it is too high. That said, if I was, Emily Damari's mum, I'd be going, pay any... they paid a ransom.
Yeah, they have. And the trouble with ransoms is it only encourages this kind of conduct, this type of activity in the future. And there is no equivalent, right? They wanted 3 people. Israel got 3 people, right? Yeah. And let me tell you, Emily Damari, Romy Gonen, Doran Steinbrecher hadn't killed anyone. They hadn't committed a war crime. They hadn't committed any crime, frankly. They had the audacity to go and party at a music festival for peace. In exchange, Hamas got... some had just been detained. Some had been convicted long ago for committing the most appalling, despicable terrorist atrocities on civilian people, and they got 90 of them back. If you think that is a fair swap, you're mad. It's not a fair swap, and that tells you everything you need to know about Hamas, that they wanted 90 terrorists, 90 terrorists for 3 young girls. If you're on their side, if you sympathise with them, you're a pig, you're an animal. I really put it that highly. It is disgusting. It is despicable. These people are...
But also,
these are the bad guys.
The Mehdi Hassans and others, used to have, a prime time show, in America. But genuinely, he's someone I used to know and actually be quite friendly with until I realised apparently he thought I was beneath contempt because I was not a Muslim. And he's, some of his views have been really quite extraordinary that he's actually put on camera as well. But he was one among the many people tweeting, this deal could have happened a long time ago. They could have had the hostages home. Hey, you know what could have happened a long time ago? October the 7th, not happening, and these women not being taken hostage. I find it extraordinary. Just one last thing I want to get to before we go to a break, though. Today's also another big day, and again, a lot of people tweeting about this, commenting on Facebook about the timing of this on the day of Trump's inauguration. And we know that announcements relating to some cases have been moved around depending on events in the news. We know that happens. It's really important that people do pay attention to this. So we've got today, we have the trial of Axel Ruda-Cabana starting over the Southport attack, obviously last July. It's due to begin at Liverpool Crown Court today. The 18-year-old has been charged with 16 offences, including the murder of 3 young girls, the attempted murder of 10 others, including 8 children, as well as the production of ricin and possession of an Al-Qaeda training manual. I'm reading that out. That's literally all we can say about that trial. OK, it is really, really important that people understand the law in this country. No one is shutting down free debate. No one is shutting down. This is not a cover up. This is the law of the land for all trials. And we need to trust the justice system. I know we've had issues with the 2-tier justice over. In this case, a man has been accused of crimes. He is, under our system, innocent until proven guilty. A not guilty plea has been entered the court. He was silent at his first hearing. The trial will go ahead. You need to leave the jury to do their job as jurors. That's the system we have got. And people should not say anything that's going to prejudice anybody involved in the trial or cause a mistrial, or indeed end up in court themselves being in contempt of court. Those laws are not there to stifle free speech. Those laws are, well, you're not happy about, those laws are there to protect a criminal justice process. We have a lot of faults in our system. I was a juror a couple of years ago. I trust the jury system. It's really important that we allow this trial to go ahead without people ending up in court for making stupid points on social media.
Yeah, that's absolutely right, because there would give nothing more joy to all the wrong people for that to take place. Look, of course there's going to be a time for questions about who knew what when, what were the public told, and that will happen. But for now, the trial has to take
let the trial take place. 10:23 is the time. We're going to take a break, then we're going to get to your calls. So 0344 499 1000. I'm asking you, Donald Trump, what are your hopes or fears for this second Trump presidency? Give us a call. This is Talk.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Very good morning. Welcome back to the show. 10:26 is the time. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. This is Talk. Sam Armstrong also with me. Let's go straight to your calls about Donald Trump. Inauguration's later today. It's midday in DC time, but it's going to be 5 o'clock our time, so not going to get any of that, or even the build-up here on my show, but lots more later in the day, so do stay tuned for all that. But asking you what your hopes or indeed your fears are. I want to leave this wide open for this Trump presidency. What are your thoughts? 0344 499 1000. Let's go to Andrew, who's in Hertfordshire. Hello, Andrew.
Good morning, Julia.
Good morning. You sound very chirpy.
Yeah, it's a fantastic day because the inauguration of Donald Trump moves very much quicker the end of the Starmer government for the following reasons. It's very straightforward that he will be decisive and do things, and there will be action as a result of that. And that's happening from day one.
Yeah.
The economy in America, there'll be a blip where there'll be some inflation because there won't be the capacity to actually fulfill what people want.
Yeah.
And then it'll go gangbusters really good. At the same time, Rachel, the YTS students, will have to come to the House of Commons and ask for more money because we'll fail as financially the government will fail in April horrifically. So who is the most powerful politician at this moment in British politics, in your opinion and Sam's?
Nigel Farage.
No, I don't think he is, and it's actually a member of the Labour Party in a seat with a small majority who around about April the 15th will walk across the floor to reform, because that is what will happen. America will go really good, and we will be shown to be walking in glue with...
Oh, yeah, I know. I agree with you on that. I mean, again, it's like, we've got a government where they sort of come in and they basically just sort of do nothing and have a review on this and a review on that and give some public sector workers more rights and more money. And, brilliant. And Rachel from Accounts last Thursday asking regulators, give us some ideas for how to get the economy going. I mean, it's literally their job is the opposite of getting the economy going. It's quite extraordinary. I do agree with you. I think but only trouble is, look, it will expose Starmer's failings. It will expose the EU failings on net zero and things like that. But I don't think we get rid of the government any quicker, though. We don't have an election for another 4.5 years.
No, and I agree with you. But as I've said repeatedly to you, a week was a long time in politics, an hour is now. You wait and see, in April it will change. And then the fear about Trump is one that's been with us historically all the way through politics and also many things in life. Yeah. What's the succession plan? He's only doing four.
I'm very much liking JD Vance at the moment. We shall see. Andrew, so appreciate your call. Thank you very much, Dee. Let's go to Anthony, who's in Surrey. Hi, Anthony.
Oh, good morning, Julie. Yes, Happy New Year, by the way.
We're still doing that?
I know. I'm spoken to you for a while anyway. I'm trying to bring some cheer to this.
Good for you.
I think that it might be to Starmer's benefit in a strange way, Trump coming in, because what I'm hoping is that some of the stardust rubs off onto Starmer.
How can it rub off? He wasn't even invited.
Oh, I know, but there's going to be a big thing next year with this 250th of America, the independence.
Right.
And that may be somewhat to Starmer's benefit, because one thing we know Trump likes is glitz and glamour, as we saw at that parade last night, high camp. So he might like Mandelson after all.
there is that. No, I think he's going to... I think you're quite wrong. I think it's just going to show how pedestrian and dull Starmer is and how to sort of slow they are to do anything. And also, again, you cannot have a thriving economy without cheap, plentiful energy. That is what America already has and is not cheap enough for them, but going to have even more of. We're going to go the opposite way. That is going to be the big dividing line.
Yeah, but I'm also hoping that maybe Trump can do something about North Korea. Last time he cut through. This is the thing with Trump. He tears up all the rules.
I mean, he didn't achieve anything with North Korea.
Well, no, but perhaps he might have another chance. You could say didn't.
Well, I mean, he's already had a win on in Gaza, that's for sure. Anthony, thank you so much for your call. Appreciate that. 10:31 is the time. Sam, just a brief word on that. Very brief.
Yeah, well, it's going to be an absolute difficult time, I think, in the next 24 hours for Keir Starmer especially. But the worst thing is, I think it's going to get even tougher in the weeks ahead. privately, members of Donald Trump's closest team are saying some scathing things about our government, and that is a bad way to begin an administration.
Absolutely, and especially again, do you want to tie yourselves to the failing EU? Do you want to tie yourself to a successful, booming, US? Oh, what's a dilemma? What should we do? We know exactly what Starmer's going to do. 10:31 is the time. Let's take a break. Up next, we are going to be talking to the brother-in-law of another hostage remaining in Gaza. Celebrations, those 3 young women being freed yesterday, but so many more remain. We'll talk to the brother-in-law of Omri Miran up next. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Very good morning to you. This is Talk, the home of common sense. 10:34 is the time. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. Now, I don't know whether you, but certainly I did. I know Sam Armstrong's with me in the studio. To spend most of yesterday watching the extraordinary scenes in both Gaza and Israel as we saw the freeing of 3 Israeli hostages, 3 young women, Emily DeMaria, British-Israeli national, Romy Gonen and Doron Steinbrecher. It was unbelievably terrifying watching them being handed over by those masked gunmen in Gaza to the Red Cross, but then such relief when they were able to greet their mothers, greet the rest of their families, and to know that, well, although Emily DeMaria has lost 2 fingers after being shot on October the 7th when she was taken captive, and goodness knows what these poor 3 women have gone through over the last 471 days, but to know they are alive and to know they are safe and well. But some 94 hostages remain. It's believed that 2/3 of them could still be alive, but we simply don't know. So many other families are still just waiting with bated breath to hope that their family members may come out in the first tranche of hostages, 33 in total, we're told, in the first stage of the ceasefire, and possibly a next stage if we ever get to it. Well, one of those is Moshe Lavi. He's the brother-in-law of Omri Miran, who's a 47-year-old hostage kidnapped from his home at Kibbutz Nahal Oz on the 7th of October. Moshe, thank you very much indeed for joining us.
Thank you. Good morning.
Can I just ask, first of all, what it's like for you and the other families of hostages who are still held captive to watch the footage of those 3 young women coming home? We've seen last November, we had some other hostages released. But what is it like for you to watch that? Does it give you hope, or does it sort of almost continue the anguish that you haven't got your loved one home?
First, I will say that seeing the scenes yesterday gave hope, gave joy to our hearts in Israel. we focused yesterday on the release of those three incredible women who went through so much in Hamas captivity. And this morning we woke up in order to resume our fight for the rest of the hostages who remain in Gaza's tunnels, including my brother-in-law, Marie. It doesn't contradict each other. The opposite, seeing that the deal is going through, that there is a beginning to the end for us, the families of hostages, is hopeful.
Well, I mean, exactly. I mean, that's the thing. You know, do you have any information about what has happened to Omri since? I mean, he's a husband, he's a father of two young daughters. I mean, just, you know, they were 3 years old and 1.5 years old, and his wife, thankfully, they all survived the attack. But he was taken captive. Have you had any information about him since October the 7th, 2023?
Yes, we had a few occasions where we received information about Omri. The first one was in November of 23, when one of the hostages was released on that first deal, if you recall. Reported they saw Omri in the tunnels. We also learned from them that Omri knew that Lisha and the girls survived October 7th because they were separated at 1:30 p.m. of that terrible day, and only at 5:30 Lisha and the girls were rescued. So he was able to learn it in captivity.
Oh, I think we've just the line is just frozen, Moshe. I don't know if you can hear us, Moshe. We'll try and get that line back up. But I mean, just coming to you, Sam Armstrong, because I know you've been very much involved in this cause as well. I mean, this thing for so many of the families, they're watching. Oh, apologies, we have got Moshe back. Sorry, Moshe, the line got stuck there. I mean, but you and the family have gone, more than a year with no information about your brother-in-law. But at one point, and again, we know, for instance, the 3 young women released yesterday, that some of them had been, held captive with other hostages in the tunnels. We know that some of the hostages have had, I mean, probably all, but we know some definitely have had horrendous experiences. We know about sexual abuse, about torture, about beatings, about threats, the conditions they've been held in, effectively treated as slaves. But we also know some have been held, in middle-class families' homes in Gaza, treated as just, as a servant, look after their children, clean their clothes and things like that. I mean, what do you, as a family member, what do you go through every day thinking about your loved one and not knowing what's happening to him?
Yeah, since the last Proof of Life in April that I discussed, the psychological warfare video Hamas release of Omri, we focused on the fact that he's alive, that we can still bring him home and save him from captivity. We try and not think too much about his conditions, the conditions of his captivity, and definitely his mental and physical state. We will make sure to support Omri once he returns. But for now, we have to focus on the mission that is at hand, which is in Israel, push our government to make the concessions necessary, and then worldwide to push elected officials, including in Britain, to force countries that sponsor Hamas, Qatar, Turkey, Iran, to compel Hamas to release the hostages. That's our mission, and we have to focus on that.
Yeah. I've always said, if it was my family member, especially my daughter, any price is worth paying. But a lot of us who are fully behind Israel and the cause to get the hostages home and live in peace in Israel would still questioning whether this is a good deal. I mean, you'll know as well as I do, if Moshe can come out, fingers crossed, alive and well, there will be, perhaps 1,000 Palestinian prisoners back freed on the streets. Some of those, hundreds of those, will be convicted terrorists, violent men and women who have, killed dozens and dozens of Israelis for in the crimes they committed. Is that a price worth paying, do you believe?
There is never a good deal with a terrorist organization, especially not a genocidal terrorist organization like Hamas, whose sole goal is to eradicate the state of Israel. Yeah. But part of our ethos in Israel, and I don't know if people from other countries can relate in the same way. We have a national ethos of redeeming captives. It's also a religious command, Jewish command to redeem captives. And our social contract is based on it because we do serve in the military and we expect the state to come and rescue us if necessary. Yeah. I served myself for 6 years, and I always expected the state to do everything it can to bring me home if a terrorist organization or a country capture me. Yeah. But we need to make sure that we don't repeat the mistakes before October 7th. There were policies on the ground implemented by previous government and the current government that allowed October 7th to happen. We cannot allow Hamas to grow again. We cannot tolerate them on our border. And after all the hostages are released, the international community will also need to understand they cannot empower Hamas. They cannot transfer money to Hamas. They cannot transfer money to organizations like UNRWA, which allowed Hamas to embed in its organization. Yeah. We have to change the policies, and that's what we're going to push. But first, let's bring them home.
Get them home first. What do you make of so many people on the international stage? Whether it's UN, whether it's the Democrat American government under Biden and Kamala Harris, whether it's Keir Starmer here and our Foreign Secretary David Lammy, the criticism of the Israeli government, the succor, some would say, given to Hamas, marches even on Saturday. Yet again, fortnightly marches ever since this. Before Israel went into Gaza, by the way, there were marches in the streets of Britain, pro-Palestinian, and people saying, "Oh well, look at these hostages. They look fine. They look well fed. They're fine. They're smiling. They must be okay." What do you make of that reaction from so many people around the world?
First, I will say we as families appreciate both the work the Biden administration has done to lay the foundations and then the amazing work, incredible work done by Donald Trump and his team. We've met him several times over the past few weeks, and they are committed for the cause of releasing the hostages. I attended Mr. Lamy's a statement to Parliament earlier this week. I was in the UK for meetings and then went to Paris. And I was encouraged by some of his statements, emphasizing the plea of the hostages. But then he returned to the mantras of the old, the policies of the old, which really embolden and encourage Hamas and their accomplices in Gaza and the West Bank. I'm very worried about how things will develop after the release of the hostages. Yeah. People need to understand this is not a peace deal. This is a hostage deal. We're releasing convicted terrorists for innocent civilians and soldiers who were kidnapped on October 7th. Yeah. We're compromising things because we value life, unlike our enemies, Hamas.
And that's extraordinary thing, Hamas demanding, 30 convicted prisoners, convicted terrorists, or some of them, in return for, babies being released. It's quite extraordinary. Just finally, in terms of your brother-in-law, Henri, how his wife and their two, very young daughters, toddlers and babies, how are they coping? It's one thing for family members. It's another thing when it's your husband and your father that is missing, and you don't know what's happening to him and whether you're ever going to see him again. How do they get through every single day?
Yes, Lishai, my sister, is a true lioness. Since October 8th, after she was rescued, we all talked together. What are we supposed to do now in order to ensure Henri's release? And since then, we've been fighting together, being her shield. She's been advocating relentlessly here in Israel and in Europe and the US, doing everything she can to push relevant stakeholders, talk to the media and talk to the public. Yeah. That's very important. And we also make sure that the girls, Ronnie and Alma, get the support they need, get the sort of family love they need. But there is a gap in their lives. Ronnie and Alma call for their father every day. They wish him good night. They want to see him. And Lishai, although very strong, She also, of course, breaks at times, but we are there to pick her up
Yeah.
because she leads us towards Umri liberation.
Well, please send our very, very best to her, her daughters, and to all of your family. We are absolutely rooting for you to get your loved one home. Moshe Lavi, brother-in-law of the hostage, still being held, Omri Moran. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. Sam Armstrong, I mean, I spent a lot of yesterday watching this. I mean, thinking of it as a mother, you know, watching it was my daughter who'd been held captive and getting her home. And I think of it also, you know, like, so what if I were Lishai, you know, and my husband... My husband was taken. I didn't know if he was dead or alive. You know, we get proof of life video here. Someone's message back in November 2023. It is unbearable what people have gone through, and it's still ongoing. We've got 3 back. It's just 3.
Each and every one of those hundreds of hostages taken has left dozens of more victims.
Yeah.
Cousins, mothers, fathers, grandparents, children, friends. Everybody that was in their life that they were doing, and so many of these people were really great people that contributed so much on a kibbutz, music concerts. These were great people that everybody loved. Each and every one of those people has been affected. Why? By the appalling terrorist, unprovoked atrocity of October 7th. Never forget it. I certainly won't, and people at home shouldn't either.
Again, I think a lot of people think this is the beginning of the end. I think this is the start. I think people need to completely reassess their view on this. But 10:47 is the time. I'm going to take a quick break. Up next, going to be talking about Donald Trump's inauguration later today with Steve Gill, former advisor both Clinton and Bush Jr. administrations. Can't wait to hear what he has to say about those executive orders. This is Talk, the Home of Common Sense.
Across the UK on DAB+. On your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk, the Home of Common Sense, with me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. Let's get straight to my next guest. Steve Gill is a former advisor to both the Clinton and Bush Jr. administrations and joins us to talk about, well, what we can expect. Well, I mean, really, Steve Gill, not just from the inauguration today and not even just from Donald Trump's second term in office as president, but also what he's going to get done today in terms of these executive orders. We're told something between 100 and 200 executive orders going to be signed today alone.
Yes, well, all the focus is on the ceremonial stuff, swearing in Donald Trump, all the galas and balls and everything. The real work also starts today at 12:01. As you mentioned, he's expected to sign as many as 200 executive orders. But you will see people in the black tie and formal gowns headed to the balls and galas, many of them sporting the red MAGA hats, which isn't typically formal wear, but you're going to see plenty of those as people celebrate the reemergence of Donald Trump. A lot of people, Julia, on the left were saying that it would be a cold day in hell before Donald Trump would end up back in the White House. Well, the weather in Washington seems to be complying, as it was snowing and icing yesterday. Will be brutal cold today, and a lot of the events have been moved inside because of the weather and because of security. I've been coming here for a long time. I actually worked through a transition from first Bush to Clinton. I've never seen the security like it is. You have Vice President J.D. Vance is staying just around the corner from where I am, and they have huge dump trucks surrounding the building to prevent even a car bomb from being able to access, getting close enough to do damage.
Well, I mean, the man survived
intense.
at least 2 assassination attempts.
Yes.
One got very, very close, as we know, during the election campaign. I'm glad they've actually bothered with his security at long last. I mean, it is extraordinary, isn't it? I mean, he will be absolutely gutted. He's not going to have those big crowds outside. Now, it was quite amusing, wasn't it, in 2016 when his team they had alternative facts, didn't they? I think it was Kellyanne was saying, basically, he had bigger crowds than ever. No, there were more crowds for Obama. It's just simply not true. It wasn't the case. But it's still going to be, very star-studded. We've already seen some. I mean, I was watching some of it last night, the rally last night, and there's going to be another rally. He's going to leave Capitol building after being sworn in, and he's going to actually go and attend a rally. 20,000 Trump fans, and I know the likes of Alex Phillips from here is going to be there. Nigel Farage and all of that. Suella Braverman, who we're going to be talking to a little bit later in the show, is there. I've seen her in her Make America Great Again hat. But let's talk about. I mean, look, there's going to be lots of glitz and glamour, and we'll be excited about what Melania's wearing and all of this, and what he's going to say in his inauguration speech. But it's what he's going to do. I mean, apparently he's going to slip to an office. The president has got an office in Capitol Hill where he's going to just start signing these executive orders. That's where it gets interesting. Let's have a watch and a listen of what he had to say when he appeared before adoring fans at this rally last night and just reeled off some of the things that he's going to deal with on day one.
We're going to stop the invasion of our borders. We're going to reclaim our wealth. We're going to unlock the liquid gold that's right under our feet. Liquid gold. We're going to bring back law and order to our cities. We're going to restore patriotism to our schools, get radical left, woke ideologies the hell out of our military and out of our government. And we are going to make America great again.
After that, very soon after that, he was dancing with the real Village people who apparently voted for Kamala Harris on stage. Look, it was wonderful. I mean, I have to say, I was looking through all the possible executive orders he said he's going to do. I'm literally like, yeah, I'm loving all of it. I mean, I wish we'd have that sort of sanity here, but so much of it is just undoing the madness of the last 4 years.
Yes.
The madness of the last 4 years, which, by the way, is why there is now another Trump presidency, because America's gone, no thank you to that. How quickly can stuff really be enacted? I mean, he says he's going to, close the border, deportations day one, drill baby drill, the DEI, diversity, equity and inclusion nonsense, the federal government, DOGE, the Department of Government Efficiency. How soon, practically, does anything actually happen?
Well, many of these 200 executive orders, as you mentioned, are undoing what Biden imposed as executive orders in the past. It'll take a while for legislative work to begin because the Republicans now have a narrow control over the U.S. House, a narrow control over the U.S. Senate, and it will take a while for Donald Trump's nominees to the cabinet to get secured and be at work. But Tom Homan, the border czar, has made it clear that the raids on illegal immigrants who are those who have committed violent crimes here and in the countries they've left, that begins tomorrow. And I think you're already seeing some self-deportation that's taking place as those anticipate what's coming. So I think the work really begins at 12:01 today. You're going to see the Biden people have left, for the most part, the political appointees, but you still have bureaucrats in Washington who will move into the top spots until they are replaced by the political appointees. So it'll be a transition over the next several weeks.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be absolutely fascinating. What I've noticed really, though, is how there's so much less hysteria than there was in 2016. Look, I was one of the people that thought letting him was a bad idea. He actually did some pretty good, sensible things. I didn't like some of them. I mean, you know, there's never been a politician I've agreed with on everything, but I've certainly been horrified by what's happened under Biden and Harris, that's for sure. I certainly think that what he's doing is taking people back in the right direction. Do you think there's quite a lot of the American, completely Democrat-dominated media, other than Fox News, do you think that there is an understanding from them now that, you know what, he has got a mandate, he's got not just the White House, he's got both houses of Congress, he's also got, you know, the Supreme Court with his nominees, got the majority, that actually he is what America wants?
Well, and when you see Jeff Bezos and other media owners who are, you know, traveling to Mar-a-Lago and genuflecting, kissing the ring, as it were.
Zuckerberg kowtowing, yeah.
And we've seen that the numbers matter. I mean, when you look at MSNBC, some of these media outlets, their numbers have dropped off a cliff. So the loss of viewers is leading to a big change of the number of people who are on the stage talking about Trump, certainly on the television station. So I think there is a change there. But I think the biggest thing is that Donald Trump is different. You're seeing different tone, different focus from him. And I think, as I've mentioned here with you in the past, Julia, he now gets that personnel is policy. Who he puts in these key places in his cabinet have to be people who are determined to put his policies in place. That was not the case 8 years ago.
Yes, he had a lot of sort of hangers-on. Remember, he always said, I've got the best people. He went through staff like, I mean, in and out. There were a lot of people very unhappy in his team. But he does seem to have people who are completely, you know, intent on doing the job. I mean, particularly, of course, Elon Musk. He was the only one invited on stage last night at the rally. Interestingly, not J.D. Vance, the actual vice president elect, not the would-be vice president, effectively, Elon Musk. How hopeful are you that Elon Musk is going to, the Department of Government Efficiency is really going to turn things around in federal government? Because, my God, we need a bit of that over here.
It is like taking an aircraft carrier and trying to turn it on a dime. It's not possible. It will take a while. But you're already seeing many of those in these questionable agencies, the alphabet agencies, the FBI, the DOJ, and others. Senior leadership are exiting. Many of them are political, but there are others that are leaving just ahead of the investigators, perhaps. And I think that the changes in the turnover at the top will have an immediate impact. And then, you know, again, you've got these bureaucrats that are burrowed in. It'll take a while to clean them out. Yeah,
absolutely. Thank you so much for that, Steve Gill. I really appreciate it. It's a very busy day for you, former advisor to both Clinton and Bush administrations. Really quick word from you, Sam, but we'll come back to this after the top of the hour.
Well, I'm looking forward to the speech. I think this could be some vintage Donald Trump. I'm trying to come up with the drinking game already. What statement should I drink whenever Trump mentions
Wasn't it George Bush Sr. had said after the last one, the one in 2016, I can't say the actual, that was some weird S. He said, because normally these things are all about looking forward, and he was really critical of the last regime. I think it's going to be, a bit more toned down from that, but we shall wait and see. I have to say, I'm looking forward to it. I think we need some lessons from this for Keir Starmer. We're talking more about that up next. This is Talk, the home of common sense.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
A very good morning to you. A big welcome back to the show. This is Talk, the home of common sense, with me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. Thank you very much for joining me, whether you're listening on DAB+ radio, on your smart speaker, watching on YouTube, or on your connected device. As I say, always so lovely to have your company. Also the company of our commentator, as always on a Monday, Sam Armstrong. Good morning to you. And I know you're particularly sort of happy about a lot of the big news
it's a big
we've got
day
today. Absolutely. Now, things we are going to be talking about in this hour, obviously more on Donald Trump being sworn in for a historic second term as the 47th president. He's at 78, the oldest president to take the oath of office. He's reclaimed the White House with a promise to sign between 100 and 200 executive orders today, on day one, on everything from border control to net zero to trans rights, you name it. And I have to say, I'm with him on every single one of those. Please, do you think we can learn something here? Do you think Keir Starmer might learn something more? I do want to hear from you, because I want to know what your hopes are. Maybe your fears. I don't know. Whatever stance you take. What are your hopes or fears for this Trump presidency? Give us a call on 0344 499 1000. Text the word TALK, then your message to 87222. Get in touch on X at Talk TV. Calls are charged at the national rate. Text costs £1. Standard network rate message, of course. Also, more on what's been going on in the Middle East. Yesterday, 3 Israeli hostages, Romy Gonen, Doron Steinbrecher, and British-Israeli Emily Damari were freed, reunited with their families in a ceasefire deal. 90 Palestinian prisoners and detainees were released in return. We're going to see probably about 1,000 in total, if we do see all of the remaining 94 prisoners, probably a third of whom are actually not even alive anymore, returned. Also, we're going to be talking more about benefits. Peers have warned in a report today that Britain's rising benefits bill, and wow, is it rising by many billions, is caused by a flawed welfare system which incentivises workers to say they're sick. Thousands of people paid sickness benefits with self-diagnosed mental health conditions. If you say you're sick, you get pretty much twice as much money. What a surprise. A lot of people say they are sick. We'll be talking more about that later in the show. Do keep in touch. Just some breaking news. We did know about this figure already. We did know this was going to happen, but again, good day to very bad news. Everyone's a bit busy with stuff going on in the States, eh? But university tuition fees are going to be going up for the next academic year. They were £9,250. They've barely gone up at all, actually, for many years. They're now going to be £9,535. It's gone up by £285. As having a daughter going to uni this autumn, this is going to impact me. £285. I mean, it's up by 3.1%. I mean, in the big scheme of things, compared to what we've seen the costs going up, I don't think there should be tuition fees at all, personally. If we're going to have them, I suppose they need to keep pace with the costs of university. But there we are. Anyway, Sam Armstrong, let's get back to, frankly, I think more important things, because I think the impact of Donald Trump's second presidential term in office is going to be huge, not just for America. It's going to be absolutely huge across the world, Western and otherwise. Massive, massive impact. He's going to be sworn in today, 5 p.m. UK time, midday American time. And then we're told, he's going to tend a rally, village people. He's going to go 3 inauguration balls. It's going to be all glitzy. It's going to be... But crucially, between that, he's going to slip to an office in Capitol Hill, we understand, where he's going to sign 100, possibly even 200 executive orders on anything and everything you can imagine. And I have to say, I'm loving this. Reinstating what's called Title 42. So basically, this is to seal the US-Mexican border. What's not to like? What's not to like about having border control? Oh, hi, Yvette Cooper. Maybe you could think about that here. Mass deportations of illegal immigrants. Why should anyone who's here illegally or America illegally be allowed to stay? Ending birthright citizenship. So, if you were born in America, whether that will actually go ahead, I doubt it. Basically, possibility we may see major new tariffs imposed, not just on Canada, Mexico and China, possibly even the EU, possibly even the UK. Who knows how quickly that might come into effect. He's going to take back the TikTok ban that was imposed by Joe Biden. He is going to drill numerous executive orders regarding basically getting more cheap, reliable energy. My God, we need more of that. Ending all the electric vehicle mandates for the net zero policies, because no one wants to buy these cars and they're all made in China anyway. ending what he calls the transgender lunacy. He says, with a stroke of my pen on day one. So basically, absolute nonsense. The US government will recognise only two genders, because there are only two genders, male and female. Ending all the diversity, equity and inclusion policies in federal government. He's going to end all of that. We've got DOGE, Department of Government Efficiency. Working from home federal employees, nah, you got to be in the office. And ending huge sums of money, billions in total of taxpayers' money in America that go to radical lefty so-called charities and NGOs. I mean, I'm loving every single bit of that, aren't you, Sam?
Yeah, and even if you didn't like what you're hearing, in politics sometimes you can judge news on the basis of who's upset about it. And all my favourite people on this list, Rory Stewart, Alistair Campbell, Gary Lineker, CNN, Kamala Harris, Joe Biden, Keir Starmer, Owen Jones. I suspect even that old Femi fellow that used to whinge about Brexit is kicking off this morning. All my favourite people are screaming.
But also, all very unhappy there'll be executive orders. OK, and he said, I'll be a dictator for a day, because that's, you know, executive orders are that. These are powers the president has. When Joe Biden does it, or Bill Clinton does it, or Obama does it, not a problem. But when Trump does it, oh, he's a totalitarian, authoritarian dictator. He's got the power to do this stuff.
Donald Trump won the presidency.
Did he?
Get over it.
They haven't got that memo.
He won it on the electoral college vote. He won it on the popular vote. He did it against expectations. He did it with
most of the media and the political classes against him.
Kamala Harris, the most fantastic candidate against him. He won. He's the president. He gets to sign the executive orders.
That's how it works.
He sat behind the Oval Office, and he is going to roll back all of the nonsense, all of the lunacy that you put in office for the last 4 years.
Again, and what's interesting, if you look back to what happened in November in that election, it's like when we look back at the July the 4th election for here in the UK, where Keir Starmer, he got into office because the of people who voted Tory in 2019, half of them either didn't vote at all or voted for Reform or another party. The Tories lost that vote. Labour didn't go up from where they were in 2019. What was interesting in America in November was Trump's vote was pretty much the same as it was in 2020. What happened was that millions of Americans I think Democrats lost 11 million voters who just went, oh my God, you guys were insane. That's not what we thought we were going to get from you. You were supposed to be the grown-ups in the room, like we have with Keir Starmer, with the grown-ups back in the room. Really, really not. Instilling a load of stuff. And again, on the personal stuff for me, things like the trans issues, and they're talking about, they're going to be attacking trans, but no, simply saying that being trans isn't a get out clause for everything. You can't be, if you're a man, you can't be in women's sport, you can't be in women's bathrooms or women's refuges or women's prisons. That's all going to end. They're just going to stop teaching children lies about you're born in the wrong body. You're not. That's not a thing. That sort of return to sanity. Thank God. Net zero, another massive big issue for me. Just this whole madness of the West effectively impoverishing itself and its people at a time when we're going to be dealing with Russia and China. It's terrifying.
Yeah, the Democrats need to learn, go woke, go broke, right? Go back to the old James Carville around Clinton's campaign's methodology. It's the economy, stupid. The American people want Democrats, the left-wing party, to focus on raising living standards for ordinary working people.
Isn't that what governments used to try and do?
That is what every single successful left-wing political party in the world has always done. Now, look, I haven't always agreed with their methods, but boy, do I agree with what they were trying to do. But of late, left-wing political parties, progressive causes in this country, around the Western world, have gone mad.
They really have.
Boy, are they getting punished.
Their policies are deliberately aimed at impoverishing us. I mean, they literally are. About getting rid of meritocracy. The only way people get ahead and able to, move from a home where, there were no books and no one went to university to having a successful life and having money and doing well in a career is because of meritocracy, good people getting ahead. And, the American dream is all about that. And I think that's something we've had brilliantly in this country. I know so many people who came from very poor families who are doing really, really well. If you work hard, you can get ahead. They took that out. But I go, oh, no, you have to have the right skin colour. You have to have the right sexuality. That is the opposite of the American dream. It's the opposite of what should be the British dream. But also making people poorer. Go, well, you know, you're going to have less and you'll be happy. You know, you can't afford to drive your car. You can't afford to heat your home. You can't afford to buy stuff. You can't afford... This, again, this agenda, this is what the whole of Europe has been doing and what our British government... The Tories were all signed up to it as well. I mean, the Tories are out. The Tories are out not because they're Tories. The Tories are out because they were Labour light. Do you think there's any hope at all, that Starmer and his ilk will go, do you know what? Actually, maybe having cheap, plentiful energy is a good thing and not impoverishing the nation. Maybe having meritocracy, not having all this DEI stuff. Or do you think actually they will, in contrast, because they still loathe Donald Trump. They're pretending that David Lammy's playing nicey. He thinks he's a member of the KKK and a Nazi, for goodness sake. Do you think that they'll actually double down more so?
Can I tell you my biggest fear? It's actually not what's happened in America. It's what's happened in Canada. Justin Trudeau has gone, and there is now a vacancy.
Well, he's still there.
There's now a vacancy on the world stage, though, for the big, progressive, global wokester. And I fear that Keir Starmer sees an opportunity here for himself to go onto the international stage, to present Britain as the global, progressive, socialist country, and he will tear us down with him for his own selfish interests. And you only need to look at personnel. We were hearing earlier that personnel is politics. Who are the people in this Labour Party that have got real agendas? Richard Herman, the Attorney General, a woke North London Liberal lawyer.
Obsessed with giving away the Chagos Islands.
That has represented every one of our country's enemies. Ed Miliband, who's obsessed on net zero and the climate. And you look at this cabinet, we're now putting Peter Mandelson in to blow up the reputation of this country
as our
US
UK ambassador to Washington,
And I just see us getting torn down a path that we can ill afford at a time that is going to be disastrous for our country, maybe good for Keir Starmer's post-political career, and maybe he's got his eyes on that already.
Well, you're right, the Justin Trudeau's, the Jacinda Ardern's, all the sort of EU leaders, the Ursula von der Leyen, they do very nicely out of this. They go on to some, you know, I don't know, sort of funded, you know, international body, and they have a lovely lifestyle. They spend the rest of their lives jetting around and having security guards, but they're actually having destroyed their countries. I mean, this is the thing. Angela Merkel hailed us, you know, the most, if only we had someone like Angela Merkel as our Prime Minister. Well, she basically destroyed Germany's economic and manufacturing base by closing down all the nuclear power stations.
And cultural integration, of course.
Yeah, I mean, come on in, the borders are open.
1 million people.
Genuinely, that was in 1 year. Genuinely insane policies. I really hope that people wake up soon. But, you know, I'd love to hear from you. What are your hopes? What are your fears for this Trump presidency? In particular, how it relates actually to Britain. Do you think we're going to learn anything, or do you think Starmer? I think that's off it. Starmer and his lot, they're going to double down on the madness. Because that's what happened. Even though it was such a close-run thing in 2020, the Biden administration doubled down on the madness. Instead of seeing that as a signal that, hey, maybe we need to be a bit saner, they doubled down. So what are your hopes or fears? Give us a call, 0344 499 1000. Text the word talk, then your message to 87222. And also get in touch on X at Talk TV. Calls charged at the national rate. Text costs £1. Standard network rate message. Also very welcome to get in touch about obviously what's been going on in the Middle East. 3 Israeli hostages freed yesterday. Emily Damari, British national, Romy Gonen and Doron Steinbrecher. Amazing to see the footage. I mean, I have to say, I shed a few tears yesterday, I really did. Fears for the women when they were released by their hostage takers. I mean, who suddenly rediscovered they had uniforms, interestingly, out of the blue. Now the IDF had moved out. Return for 90 Palestinian prisoners. We're going to see probably 1,000 Palestinian prisoners. Some of them are, you know, convicted for dozens of years or for life. For horrific mass murders, bombings, you know, of innocent people being released in return. 94 remaining hostages. We hope against hope that some 60 of them may still be alive. They include one of the relative, Omri Miran, relative, one of our guests we spoke to in the last hour. It is incredible this has gone on so long, 472 days now. Do you think this is a good deal that Israel has done, or is it just a necessary deal?
I fear it's the latter, but here's what I would say. Even at the end of this war, even at the end, you can see the same moral comparison that has run through every side of it. Who did Israel want back? 3 young girls that have been taken away from their parents, snatched in the most appalling scenes. Who did Hamas want back? Serial killers. People that are mass murderers that had killed hundreds. There is no moral equivalency here. There is no side of 6 of one, half a dozen of the other.
I'm constantly told this on Twitter.
These people are evil. They are nasty. They are genocidal, lunatic maniacs. And by the way, they were basically propagandised into that, but on the back of taxpayer-funded, appalling, disgusting UN grants that fill their schools with vile Jew hatred.
Yeah, but on this, you see, I mean, the footage yesterday, these thousands of angry men jeering at these 3 young women. It was genuinely, they must have been terrified. It was really, really scary. Like, even when they were in the Red Cross vehicles, the fighters were on there with their weapons and their balaclavas. And then they're putting out footage that literally, and they're putting it out themselves because it doesn't get out of Gaza unless this, by the way, all the footage came from Al Jazeera, fully in cahoots, based in Qatar, Qatari-run organisation, Qatar, who've been harbouring the Hamas leaders all this time. It was all PR'd for them. They want this as a show of force. It just shows us what they really are. Footage of children with guns wearing, the Hamas, green headbands. I mean, it's genuinely terrifying, and being led in chants of, kill the Jews. I mean, they're telling us who they are. And we're told, oh, no, there must be peace. There is no way that the Israeli government, whether it's headed by Netanyahu or anybody else, can put up with Hamas in power still in Gaza. Hamas aren't giving up power. There is no moderate Palestinian Authority. They're not moderate. People are insane if they think these people. All of these organisations all want Israel wiped from the map. They don't believe in a 2-state solution. They believe in a 1-state solution, and that state is Palestine, Israel, and Jews no longer existing. So where does this end? This isn't peace. This is a temporary ceasefire, surely.
Look at the scenes. The soldiers there in their balaclavas were, of course, disgusting dogs, vile animals. But beneath them, behind them, were crowds and crowds of cheering people in civilian clothes. I say people, actually. Let's just be clear. Every single one of them was a man. The women weren't allowed out, right? Every single one of those people out there was a man, because quite apart from everything else, they are sexist pigs as well, OK? These people hate women. They don't like women. They think women should stay at home and do the cooking while they go out and bay at hostages, while they cheer it on, while they climb on vans and trucks. This is not a minority pursuit in Gaza. It just isn't.
They didn't look very desperate and starving either, I thought, the people who were among the baying mob.
I wish it was the case that there was a small minority of terrorists in Gaza that were supporting Hamas, and everybody else was thinking, this is disgusting, we're going to overthrow them any day now. It ain't so. No. It ain't so. There is widespread anti-Semitic Jew hatred running through that entire city, and it hasn't been dealt with. It is going to bubble up, and there is going to be a terrorist atrocity, just like October 7th, within the next 5 years. Those are the facts. Nothing has changed. Yeah. The world shouldn't be looking at itself today and patting itself on the back, because all it's done is just reverse some of the damage of what's happened.
What amazes me is also so many of the commentators, allowed to say, I split between all the different channels, and on Sky and BBC, constantly guests being allowed to say, Palestinian guests saying, this unprecedentedly violent, terrible war. It's not unprecedented. It's not violent. If you look at footage from Ukraine, and literally any war, you see this level of devastation. This is what happens. But again, also, I wonder why on earth were the IDF in Gaza? What on earth could have prompted that? I just find it absolutely extraordinary that people are still justifying it. We also saw on Saturday, did we not, yet another march, supposedly pro-Palestinian, blatantly just pro-Hamas now. I don't know why they just aren't more honest about it. Some of the placards are very honest about it, aren't they? It was being led by the Stop the War Coalition, who are actually very much in favour of war. I mean, some years back they were very much in favour of a full-scale war against Israel. Jeremy Corbyn, no longer a Labour MP, but John McDonnell, Labour MP, and others, leading this sort of a demonstration. They were banned from going to a certain place. They wanted to be outside a synagogue, like that, unnecessary, deliberately provocative and threatening. And people decided to take a step. There was agreement there would be a sort of a separate march, that they would take flowers. It's all about caring and loving, isn't it? And they basically walked through a police line saying you're not supposed to do this. Jeremy Corbyn has been questioned along with John McDonnell and various others. There have been quite a number of arrests. What do you make of that march and indeed the police questioning? Because now we're told, it's about police controlling. Well, they didn't, I mean, at the end of the day, they were allowed to go ahead with their march, but the police also have the right to limit where you go.
Jeremy Corbyn promised us kindler, gentler politics.
I remember that.
Jeremy, if it's kinder, gentler politics, why are Jews scared of you? Why are people terrified? Why are the police having to question you over the marches that you're leading?
Yeah.
Why are people afraid to go into central London on a Saturday?
Yeah.
I'll tell you why, Jeremy, because you're not offering kinder, gentler politics. You are back to supporting your friends in Hamas and Hezbollah.
He's never met a terrorist he didn't like.
The only terrorist he didn't like is one that was probably on our side.
Yeah, it is just quite extraordinary, isn't it? It really, really is. Also happening today, and again, I just cannot reiterate this enough, how important it is that people don't do or say anything to threaten the fair justice process. The trial of Axel Ruda-Kubana, it starts today. It's at Liverpool Crown Court. This is over the Southport attack on the 29th of July last year. Ruda-Kubana is charged with 16 offences, murder of 3 young girls, attempted murder of 10 others, including 8 children, production of ricin and possession of an Al-Qaeda training manual. Of course, we knew about those other 2 charges much later on last year. That trial is beginning today. It will take a number of weeks, and it's really important that people understand the contempt of court rules in this country. It's not just for this trial, it's for all trials. Trust the jury, trust the system, trust that justice must be done. People are innocent until proven guilty in this country. Stop pronouncing on what you think did or did not happen. This is just the time to zip it, read the reports. Journalists are only allowed to report what happens in court. That's it. That is our system. It's not a cover-up. It's what the law is for every single trial. I was on a jury a couple of years ago. Trust the jury to hear all the evidence and give their verdict. And at the end, when we get the verdict, whatever it is, that's when you can talk again about it. I really cannot entreat people enough to just do not end up either sabotaging this trial or ending yourself end up in prison for breaching the contempt of court order. Right, let's go to a quick break. Up next, we are going to go to your calls. What are your hopes or fears for this Trump presidency? This is Talk, Home of Common Sense.
It's in Britain's interest for our closest ally to succeed. And yet, the sort of sneering and whining and people like Ed Davey jumping on the bandwagon, already putting out statements saying how dire everything is.
And how dangerous he's going to be and all this, right?
Dangerous day for the world and all this gibberish. And I just think, I mean, I'm probably more wishful thinking, but I've just sort of thought, sitting there yesterday, I was writing that, I was like, can everyone just calm down? And let's just see what happens, let's see how it goes.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is indeed Talk, the home of common sense, with me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. Sam Armstrong still with me as well, and delighted to get your calls on air. 0344 499 1000. I'm asking you today, what are your hopes or fears? I'd love to know either side for this Trump presidency. Derek is on the line. He's called up on 0344 499 1000, and he's in Manchester. Good morning to you, Derek.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Yeah, Trump's presidency. Yep. Absolutely brilliant. I couldn't wish for anything more, but I just hope it rubs off and on this country a little bit. I'm hoping that our so-called politicians take a little bit of notice of what he gets on with within his first day. I'm just hoping they take a little bit of notice and realise that the British people are absolutely fed up to the back teeth of who we've got in.
Oh, and it's only 7 months in.
Pardon?
And it's only 7 months in.
Yeah, well, absolutely.
See, I think the British people will.
Before it doesn't matter. I'm not talking about just Starmer. I'm talking about the whole
lot. That's true. But I think the British people. I think it's going to rub off on the British people, because we're going to go, oh, look at their economy booming. Look at their jobs.
I'm hoping that we're going to be so jealous in this country when we see what he does and that he turns his country round, that we're going to actually think of a mechanism to get rid of corrupt governments, because that's what we've had for the last 20 years at least.
You think they're corrupt? I wouldn't say they're corrupt. I mean, I think they're
corrupt. What? He's checking backhanders for everything he does, for God's sake.
No, I wouldn't. I'm not going to go that far. I don't think we need to be. Look, I think they're incompetent. I think they're totally out of touch, and I think they look after their mates and their own interests, and they don't care about ordinary people. But I don't actually think it's corrupt as such. I mean, it's certainly not as corrupt as American politics. I mean, I'm sorry, but the people who will most benefit in America from Donald Trump's policies are actually going to be Donald Trump's billionaire mates, and he's put a load of them in the cabinet. I think other people will benefit as well, and I'm really pleased with lots of stuff he's going to do, certainly with his executive orders. But it is always, when the Republicans are in power, it is always the rich that benefit. Now, it's when the Democrats are in power, it's always the rich that benefit too. So I mean, they're kind of as bad as each other on that front. But I've got high hopes as well. But I don't think the Labour Party is going to watch and learn anything. I think they're going to double down on their own madness, like net zero, like diversity and all that nonsense.
Have the power to get rid of surely we should have the power to get rid of a government that maybe not corrupt, but certainly not doing what they should be doing, or not doing what the people want them to do. Because for as long as I can remember, the main issue that I've always voted on, and most people I know, have been the uncontrolled immigration we've had in this country since going back to the 70s. Now, really, it was Blair. I mean, the numbers just went off the scale under Blair, and then off the scale even more under the Tories. 70s onwards, but not forgetting that, not a single government was elected on the promise that they'd increase immigration,
no, exactly,
or even keep it happening.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. And again, I'm totally in favour of what Donald Trump's going to do in terms of absolutely just taking out deporting illegal migrants as well. Derek, thank you very much indeed for that. Let's go to Pav, who is in Harrow. Hello, Pav.
Good morning, Julia.
Good morning. So what are your hopes and fears?
Well, just before I get on to that quickly, I was just enjoying you educating people about not writing on Twitter about the impending cases today, an old legal principle which they think somehow this government's introduced. But quickly, I'm a bit like you. I called out Trump at the time on January the 6th for some of his actions, and I stand by that. But I'm tired of the almost cantankerous nature that the media and some of these commentators are continuing to peddle. Look, at the end of the day, whatever people make about January the 6th, the American electorate had their say. They did so emphatically with the 7 swing states and with the popular vote. And at least they haven't come out and called him illegitimate just yet. Yeah. But I'm just frankly tired, Julia, of the fact that anybody who seems to have a national self-interest and put, their own country ahead of others, whether it's Trump, whether it's Modi, whether it's anybody else, are immediately be put into the same category as some sort of authoritarian figures of North Korea and China. No.
Or Hitler.
Democracy.
Yeah, but again, here's the thing. Since when did governments get elected not trying to make their country better or make their people better off? That used to be what democracy was about. And now so many parties... Net zero is literally about impoverishing people. That's what it's about.
Well, the thing is, Julia, ironically in America, and it's going to be interesting to see, David Turk, the Deputy Energy Secretary, essentially quoted a figure during a congressional hearing about a year and a half ago of $50 trillion. That's just the cost to America. Yep. And if you just to go back to the other point, if you're talking about a government potentially elected on anything but self-interest, there's a small government in the United Kingdom which I suspect was elected on that ground because they're desperate to do everything they can here, and of course they're desperate to give everything that we had in terms of Chagos away. So there you are, Julia.
No, I agree with all of that, Pav. Thank you very much indeed, very much. I appreciate that. 11:32 is the time. We're going to go to a quick break and then we're going to be talking to the very wonderful Spiked Online's Brendan O'Neill. This is Talk, the home of common sense.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning. This is Talk, the home of common sense, for me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. Just some breaking news for you coming out of Liverpool Crown Court, where, of course, day one of the trial in the case of Axel Ruda-Kubana, obviously on trial for the Southport attack last July. Axel Ruda-Kubana has pleaded guilty on the very first day of the trial to murdering 3 young girls in the knife attack at the Taylor Swift-themed dance class. He appeared at court charged with the murders of Alistair Silva-Aguirre, just aged 9, B.B. King, aged 6, and Elsie Stankum, aged 7. But he has pleaded guilty to their murders. Now, of course, this is still a live trial proceeding. We're awaiting any news regarding any other pleas related to the attempted murder charges and also charges in relation to production of ricin and possession of Al-Qaeda training manual. So I really do need to stress that people still really must not comment on this trial until we know exactly what the situation is. But breaking news in the last 2 minutes that Ruda-Kubana has pleaded guilty on the first day of his trial at court to murdering 3 young girls in a knife attack at the Taylor Swift-themed dance class in Southport. Sam Armstrong, just your very quick reaction to that,
Well,
such as we are allowed.
Well, at the very least, Axel Rudikabana has pleaded guilty to murdering 3 children. There is only one sentence available by law to those who've been convicted or indeed pled guilty to murder, and that's life imprisonment. Of course, there may still be a trial on the remaining charges, and there will be intense public interest in what is going on there. Until we know anything about that, we really shouldn't say more. But
absolutely.
at the very least, Axel Rudikabana has pled guilty to an appalling set
The
of
3 most
murders.
serious charges. Brendan O'Neill is joining us now to talk about all things political, chief political writer at Spiked Online. Brendan, I know you've written an awful lot about this case, and of course it is still sub judice. We need to be very careful. I know you understand, as a journalist, the rules around this. Actually, just breaking news, Rudikabana has also pleaded guilty to the attempted murder of 8 other children and the attempted murder of the 2 dance teachers, Leanne Lucas and Jonathan Hayes. Brendan O'Neill, your reaction to that?
Yeah, that is incredibly interesting. As you say, there's so little that we can say publicly about this, precisely because we want justice to be done. We want justice to be done for the girls who were killed and the girls who were injured, the families that were destroyed. So it's so important that we be careful in how we talk about it. But, you know, it will be really good when the truth comes out, because there's been so much mystification in relation to this case, and I think people want the facts, they want the truth, and they want justice.
Absolutely, and we know there are so many people who were imprisoned as a result of their reactions to the deaths of those 3 girls last summer, and a huge impact that had. I know we're still getting more breaking news in, and I'm just waiting. As soon as I get more, I will bring that to you. Let's also talk about other big events today. There's lots going on at home, lots going on abroad. But can I ask you about Trump and his inauguration today, and these 100, possibly even 200 executive orders that we're expecting to have announced by Donald Trump? The question we're asking our audience, what are your hopes, what are your fears for this Trump presidency?
I think today's a great day for democracy. Now, that doesn't mean I align with Trump on absolutely everything he says. I don't think he's the best thing since sliced bread, as some people do, but I do think he's an interesting, sometimes quite funny politician. But it is a truth that the American people voted for him. They voted for him in their tens of millions. They want him in power. They want him to change the country. They want to win their country back from the woke oligarchy that's been running it and destroying it for the past few years. So this is a great day of democracy. It's a great day of promise. I think the American people will feel very excited, even if the media classes will be wringing their hands. And I hope that Trump dismantles a lot of those crazy ideas that have taken hold in the West over the past few decades. And it looks like that's one of the things he really wants to do.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. It's going to be fascinating. How much do you think our own government, the Labour government here under Keir Starmer, is going to listen and learn from what Donald Trump's done? Now, you and I agree on so many of the big issues which actually Donald Trump is going to sign the executive orders on. I mean, things like, net zero, getting rid of that, cheap, plentiful fuel. And you can't have a booming economy without cheap, plentiful energy. Getting rid of the diversity madness that has trashed and damaged our children. Dealing with, mass uncontrolled immigration. Do you think that Keir Starmer's going to watch and learn and go, oh, yeah, these are popular policies? Or do you think he's actually just going to double down and go the other way?
I think he's probably going to go double down and go the other way. I mean, it's going to be a wake-up call for the West. There's no question of that, because America is still the leader of the free world, and what happens in America has an impact everywhere. So it will have an impact. It will shake up the political establishment in the UK and in other countries too. But whether Starmer's capable of learning the lesson of American democracy, I can't see it myself. I think he's too wedded to these eccentric ideologies. He's too wedded to the ideology of net zero. I think he's still enamored to the transgender ideology, even though he's landed himself in hot water on that issue. He's still quite authoritarian. He doesn't particularly believe in freedom of speech. He doesn't believe in freedom of speech at all, in fact. So Starmer is still very much of that woke mold. He still is in with all of those crazy, destructive ideas. So I think Trump's emergence back into the White House will have an impact on Starmer and have an impact on Europe. But whether it will change what happens in Britain, I don't think it will, certainly not in the short term.
That is certainly the worry, isn't it? What do you make also of what is going on in our government here, and the decision, for instance, to send Peter Mandelson over as the UK ambassador to Washington DC, a man totally and utterly, absolutely, I mean, up to his neck with Chinese contacts, fully endorsing, he was a former EU commissioner, a man who had to resign twice from office himself, a man who was bizarrely really quite good friends with, would turn out, with Jeffrey Epstein, in contact with him, just like Prince Andrew, after he'd been found guilty and had served time in an open prison for trafficking a teenage girl. What do you make of those choices? What does that tell us about where Keir Starmer is?
I don't know whether I hate Peter Mandelson or really admire him. I mean, his staying power is extraordinary. This man must know where the bodies are buried, because you can't get him out of politics. He is Teflon. Nothing sticks to him. I think he's probably one of the best political operators of modern times. He's been around for so long. He's been in so many different governments and cabinets, and he's got lots of connections. And now he's going to have one of the cushiest jobs in Western politics, which is to be an ambassador in America, which is just such a nice gig to have, and quite an influential one as well. I think, Mandelson, for all his faults, and there are many of them, I think he probably will be quite good at kind of moving and shaking in Washington, D.C. I think he'll probably even be quite good at mingling with Trumpites. I mean, he is a bit of a chameleon figure. He is quite good at mingling with people, regardless of their political views and their political backgrounds. And recently, he's made a few noises about the development of wokeness that have been slightly positive and interesting, a little bit like Tony Blair has as well. Yeah. So I think Mandelson might do a good job to begin with, but he'll have to be really careful not to tick off the Trump administration by being too eccentric or too weird. Yeah. And let's see if he can play his cards right on that.
Indeed. Now, look, I'm just going to come back to the breaking news regarding Axel Rudy-Kobane. He has now pleaded guilty to all charges against him, not just to the murder of 3 young girls, the attempted murder of 8 other girls, and the attempted murder of the 2 teachers, Leanne Lucas and Jonathan Hayes, at that Taylor Swift-themed dance class. He's also pleaded guilty to production of ricin and possession of an Al-Qaeda training manual, and also possession of a bladed article in a public place, namely a kitchen knife with a curved blade. It's day 1 of his trial. He's going to be sentenced on Thursday. The expectation, Brendan, had been that this case would last 3 to 4 weeks. It was known that from previous plea hearings that he was not, that no defence had been offered. He'd been silent in a previous court hearing, did not offer a guilty plea, so the judge then enters a not guilty plea sort of automatically, so that a trial would go ahead. But he has now pleaded guilty on the first day of his trial to all of the charges against him related to that horrific Southport attack. Your reaction to that, Brendan O'Neill?
It's what an interesting development. What a striking development this is. And the fact that he's, as you say, pleaded guilty to everything, including the production of ricin and the possession of an Al-Qaeda style manual, that's really fascinating. And again, this is the truth that people want, because we've been told so many different things about this case. We've been told it's not terrorism, maybe it is terrorism. There is so much shrouded around this case that we don't know. And the truth, people want the truth. They want to know the truth of how something so barbaric could happen to girls in this country. But I think, regardless of the sentencing and the conclusion of this case, which we all want to see, we will need a nationwide discussion about the culture of nihilism and about the fact that something like this could happen in Britain in the 2020s. We have to have a reckoning with our society as well as having a conclusion to this case. And if we don't do that, it's really a missed opportunity, I think.
It really is. Thank you very, very much indeed, Brendan O'Neill. We've actually covered some topics I know you wouldn't been expecting to cover there, so appreciate that. Chief political writer at Spike. online. Sam Armstrong, your reaction, again, information sort of dribbling in from the court. We have to be very careful we don't go ahead of that. But this Axel Rudicaban, can everyone stop calling him a teenager and showing a picture of him as a choir boy, about the same age as the girls that he stabbed to death and left in hospital for days on end. He's a grown man. He's an 18-year-old. He was just, like I said, a week or two off his 18th birthday when he committed these crimes. He has now pleaded guilty to these horrific crimes. This devastated not just those families, this devastated a nation. It devastated the town of Southport. It led to wide-scale rioting, massive questions about our two-tier justice system. It looks like justice, thank God, here has at least been done.
Yeah, just a few moments ago there was very little we could say about this man, but now we can. And let's say this. This was one of the most appalling terrorist atrocities this country has seen in a very long time. There are 3 murdered girls, all of whose families have to wake up every day without their daughter. Can't even imagine it, yeah. There are now big questions, and there are big questions to answer about what was known when. We were told at the time that there was no connection in this case to terrorism.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
There was a press conference given in 10 Downing Street by the Prime Minister to pour cold water on any suggestion of that nature. Later, much later, we learn, and he has now pled guilty, that this man had an Al-Qaeda terrorist manual in his house. There are beyond serious questions for the Prime Minister of Great Britain and Northern Ireland to answer about why the public were not given this information at a time of intense national debate. Yeah.
Also, either the Home Secretary or the Chief of Police there lied to the Prime Minister, or he lied to us. Either way, I think a head needs to roll.
This is one of the most serious, damaging episodes for our entire justice system in a very, very, very long time. People were rightly sceptical about what they were being told. They were proven right. And if there is even a sniff, if there is even a scintilla of doubt that there is any sort of cover-up, any kind of information being withheld, moving forwards, people will be very, very slow to trust the justice system ever again.
Absolutely. That damage, so much damage already done. Look, just that breaking news. Axel Rudicaban has pleaded guilty to all charges: murder, attempted murder, possession of the of ricin and the Al-Qaeda manual. He has pleaded guilty to all of that. First day of his trial at Liverpool Crown Court. We're going to be talking to our reporter Alex Dibble in just a couple of moments about all of that. Stay tuned and welcome your calls. We can discuss it all now. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. This is Talk, the home of common sense.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk, the home of common sense. Thank you very much indeed for joining me. Just if you're tuning in right now, incredible breaking news from Liverpool Crown Court in the last 15 minutes or 20 minutes or so. Alex Ruda-Cabana has pleaded guilty on the very first day of his trial to all charges in relation to the Southport attacks. Joining us in the studio right now is news reporter Alex Dibble. Alex, thank you for joining us. There was an expectation, he hadn't pleaded guilty himself from previous hearings, that there would be a full trial, 2, 3, 4 weeks long, starting today. Quite a surprise to everyone that he has pleaded guilty. Tell us what he's pleaded guilty to.
He was charged with 16 offences, 3 of murder relating to the 3 girls who died as a result of his deadly attack in July last year. They were, just to remind everybody of their names, Alice da Silva Aguiar, Elsie Dot Stankham and BB King, who were 9, 7 and 6 years old. They were part of the group who were at this Taylor Swift-themed dance class in Southport in July last year, just at the start of the summer holidays. He was charged with their 3 murders. He was also charged with the attempted murder of 8 other children at that class and the attempted murder of 2 adults. The dance instructor, who was a woman called Leanne Lucas, and a businessman by the name of John Hayes. Later on, during searches of his home in Lancashire, in Banks, which is not far from Southport at all, a biological toxin, ricin, was discovered, as well as an Al-Qaeda manual that you mentioned a few moments ago before the break, which was entitled Military Studies in the Jihad Against the Tyrants, the Al-Qaeda Training Manual.
Yeah, it does exactly what it says on the tin.
He was charged with offences for both of those and with a final one of possessing a knife on the day of the attack. So 16 offences. He has pled guilty to all of them.
Every single one of them. Now, there is one reporting restriction that still remains on this trial, and that is the identity of the 8 girls who were stabbed, but thankfully lived through that. Obviously, we need to respect that, just for the sake of the families and these children's safety, I would have thought as well. This case, I mean, this not only was unbelievably awful and traumatic for those involved and for the families, but also for the people of Southport. We saw demonstrations on the day. We then saw a whole string of riots across the country in Southport and elsewhere. We then saw hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of arrests. People right now, hundreds of people, are behind bars as a result of things they did on those following days, but also things they wrote, whether it was on X, on Twitter, or on Facebook or elsewhere. This has absolutely really stolen a nation's hearts, this case. We were told, were we not, there was rumours going around on the day that it was an illegal migrant who had come in and a false name was given. That was quickly debunked. However, people went out on the streets. We then did get this statement from the police that this was a Cardiff-born young man. Now, the fact that he was born in Cardiff, but he was of immigrant parents from Rwanda. I think a lot of people felt they'd been misled. And then we had the statement from the Prime Minister insisting this is not terror-related, there are no terrorism charges related to this terror investigation. We then discovered months later, that ricin and the Al-Qaeda manual were involved. There are still big questions to be answered about that by the police, by the Home Office and by the government and by the Prime Minister himself.
There are big questions. I think it's been a very interesting case because, as you mentioned, right from the start, information was being released to the public which wouldn't ordinarily be released, such as the birthplace of the prime suspect. Yeah. That's not normally said. His identity also was released, and that doesn't normally happen, also because he was 17 at the time of the offence, so normally he would be anonymous.
But then a week later he was going to be 18.
He was. But the authorities have always been aware, and whether you believe they've done the right thing or not throughout, but they've always been very aware of the sensitivities of this and how this case sparked the riots, and they had to deal with that separately. Throughout, the police never linked the possession of the Al-Qaeda manual and the toxin to the stabbing that he carried out. So they were always kept separate. Now, many people would say, surely not.
Anyone with half a brain.
But that's always legally how those two things have been divided. But you're right in the sense that there were very serious questions about who knew what when, what time was the Prime Minister and the Home Secretary made aware that these things have been found at his home, and how long did it take after that point for that information to be made public?
But that's the thing. It was made public so much later on. They searched his home on the day that he was arrested. The idea that they hadn't discovered this stuff until many months later is frankly for the birds. And that is where we've got people quite rightly very, very suspicious about what information has been withheld from them. What do you make of the timing of the trial? Many people, there are a lot of conspiracy theorists on social media. I've been trying to advise people, for the love of God, let the judicial process go through. We've got a lot of problems, I think, with two-tier justice. Let the jury do their job if there was a proper trial. And people are innocent until proven guilty. I think we need to protect that. Now, or plead guilty, as in this case. The timing of the trial today, on the day of Donald Trump's inauguration, all focus on Donald Trump's inauguration in the newspaper. A lot of people saying the timing was very suspicious, and they were trying to sort of, have our attention elsewhere rather than focusing on this trial. Do you think there's anything in that?
Probably not for me to pass comment on that, but the timing of the trial was set by the trial judge, and that took place as a result of the legal proceedings. He was, of course, charged months ago. He entered, although he had pleas entered on his behalf a week before Christmas, and at that point a trial date was set.
Yep.
As you said, the trial was expected to last 3, 4, maybe even up to 6 weeks. So I think if you're someone who believes that there is suspicion in the timing, you have to reconcile with the fact that today was just jury selection. We weren't going
to have anything.
We weren't going to have anything until tomorrow, maybe the next day. And at that point, it would have made headline news, and the inauguration would have been a couple of days before.
Yeah, absolutely. Very fair point. Alex Dibble, thank you very much to our Deputy Head of News here. Just a quick word from Sam Armstrong. We will come back to this after 12.
How many things out of the ordinary have to happen in a process before you get suspicious? Here, I'll just come out and say it. I don't think we were told the truth entirely at the time.
Yep.
I'm still concerned that we've not heard the truth now. I think the suggestion that there's no link between the terror and the murder is bizarre.
I think
there is stuff we're not being told.
Well, we're going to talk about this after 12. We're also going to be talking more about Trump inauguration with Suella Braverman, former Home Secretary. Of course, she's over at the inauguration today. She's going to be joining us. I wonder what her thoughts are going to be on this. Do stay tuned. You don't want to miss that. This is Talk. We are, of course, the home of common sense.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, a very good afternoon to you. This is Talk, the home of common sense. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. I know sometimes we talk about, it's a busy news day. Wow, it's a busy news day. Let's be sure about that. The trial of Axel Rudiker for the Southport attack was due to begin, did begin this morning at Liverpool Crown Court. 4 to 6 weeks of trial was expected, but no, today, within minutes of arriving in court, Rudiker pleaded guilty on all charges. He pleaded guilty to murdering 3 young girls, pleaded guilty to 8 counts of attempted murder in relation to 8 other children, pleaded guilty to the attempted murders of 2 adults, including dance teacher Leanne Lucas, and he also pleaded guilty to possession of a knife and also to possession of ricin and an Al-Qaeda training manual. That case is now over ahead of sentencing on Thursday. Your thoughts on that? I'd love to hear. 03844, sorry, 0344, apologies, 499 1000. That's 0344 499 1000 is the number to call to have your say on that. Also going to be talking more about Donald Trump. He's going to be sworn in for a historic second term as the 47th president today. The 78-year-old is the oldest president to take the oath of office. He's going to reclaim the White House with a promise to sign some 100 to 200 executive orders on day one, today, on everything from border control to net zero to trans rights. Going to be talking all about that in the next couple of moments to Home Secretary former Home Secretary Suella Braverman is over in DC for the inauguration. Also talking more about the 3 Israeli hostages, Romy Gonen, Doron Steinbrecher and British-Israeli Emily Damari, all freed yesterday, returned to their families as part of the ceasefire deal, though 90 Palestinian prisoners were released in return. We'll have to wait realistically a week for more hostages to be released. Extraordinary day. I've been asking you today to get in touch about Donald Trump. What are your hopes? What are your fears for this Trump presidency? Give us a call, 0344 499 1000. You can text on 87222. I'll get to some of those messages in this next half hour. You can get in touch on X at Talk TV as well. Calls are charged at the national rate. Text cost 1, standard network rate message. Sam Armstrong is still with me in the studio. Delighted to say, get your thoughts on what my next guest has to say. Joining us now, live from Washington, DC, is the former Conservative Home Secretary Suella Braverman. A very good afternoon or stroke morning for you, Suella.
It's a pretty freezing morning here in DC, so good morning from America.
Well, thank you very much indeed for joining us. I must ask you, before we talk about Donald Trump, about the Axel Rudiker case, pleading guilty to all charges on the first day of his trial. Big concerns about what the authorities did know, what they didn't know, what they were willing to tell the public. Were we lied to? We certainly weren't told about the charges related to the production of ricin, the possession of an Al-Qaeda training manual. We were told this wasn't a terror attack, not linked at all, we're told, after these children and these adults were stabbed by this man. What do you make of him pleading guilty, and what do you make of the information that the public has been given by the authorities since that terrible, terrible day on the 29th of July last year?
Well, condolences and thoughts and prayers and love must go out to the victims' families and all those who are directly affected in Southport. This is a tragedy of unthinkable scale. But what we see now from the guilty plea is that there was an element of terrorism involved, and these were terrorist attacks. And so there are real questions to ask about how the government was communicating what they knew in the aftermath of the incident. This incident has rocked a whole community. It's rocked the nation. And if this has been exacerbated by attempts to conceal the truth from the British public in an illegitimate way, then serious questions need to be asked.
And this is the thing, because the Prime Minister himself came out and gave a statement saying, there was no terror link, even though months later we learned of those charges related to ricin and the Al-Qaeda manual. But they wouldn't have been found, months later in his home. I would find that utterly extraordinary if that were the case. How can they say there is no terror link when someone with an Al-Qaeda manual with ricin stabs children. We've seen again and again, the threats against Taylor Swift's concert in Vienna. We've seen the attack that we saw, the terror attack on the concert at the Manchester Arena. Often it is the case that it is young women, young girls who are attacked by Islamist extremists. Why would anyone think that there wasn't a terror link here?
The problem we've got in parts of our institution right now is a wholesale cowardice and fear, an institutional cowardice, as I like to call it, to confront these very uncomfortable truths about what is happening in our country. And the scale of radicalism, radicalization, extremism, Islamism within some of our communities is very high. It's very concerning. And the authorities, I'm afraid, and you can see this very well chronicled in the William Shawcross review of the Prevent scheme, are taking a very reticent, fearful approach to de-radicalise, identify the early warning signs of potential extremism. And that is something that we need to have a much bigger and profound conversation about in our country.
Yeah, and I think it all ties into, grooming gangs in that sense. It's just it's all very awkward. Oh, let's not talk about it. And again, even that first information on day one when people were saying that the suspect was, they were complete lies, that this was an illegal migrant who'd arrived on a Channel boat and like that, and a false name. Nope, that wasn't what the case was. But then they put out, this is someone born in Cardiff, and everyone had this image. Oh, right. I mean, yeah, we all would have had an image of what they meant by that, and they knew that. Turns out he was born in Cardiff, but he was the son of Rwandan immigrants. And again, that feeling that a lot of people in the public have that they're just being lied to all the time. The concern we had over the two-tier justice in the wake of the Southport riots has massively turned our justice system on its head, where different communities were treated completely different by the police and by the justice system. Do you think that we need to have a reckoning on this?
Yes, this is not new. This is the scandal, actually. As I said, if you read the William Shawcross review of Prevent, he talks about how opportunities are deliberately overlooked and missed because of people's fears of being called Islamophobic or racist. He talks about a real culture of fear because people who are professionals in the police, in our counter-terrorism policing, in our frontline services dealing with these kinds of situations are actively withdrawing from doing their job because they're scared of being called racist. Yep. And we can see the tragic consequences of that fear. And unfortunately, this is a corollary effect of mass migration and a failure of a robustness within our law enforcement.
Yeah, indeed. And again, it's now been revealed that this young boy, again, pictures of him, choir boy, all this, he'd actually been excluded from his secondary school at one point for a violent incident involving a hockey stick. So, does suggest that, he wasn't quite the little innocent little choir boy that had been played out in the press. Look, let's turn our attention to what you are doing today, which is, in a few hours' time, attending the inauguration events for Donald Trump entering his second term in office. He's promised, and he did so at an event last night, big rally last night. We'll play a little clip in just a moment, but promised to sign more than, between 100 and 200 probably executive orders. Very similar, of course. We saw executive orders, did we not? From every president. Joe Biden did plenty on his first day. Let's have a little listen and a watch to what Donald Trump said at the rally last night about the sort of things that he will be signing executive orders on.
We're going to stop the invasion of our borders. We're going to reclaim our wealth. We're going to unlock the liquid gold that's right under our feet. Liquid gold. We're going to bring back law and order to our cities. We're going to restore patriotism to our schools, get radical left, woke ideologies the hell out of our military and out of our government. And we are going to make America great again.
I have to say, Suella Braverman, nothing there I don't like. What do you make of these promises?
Well, I was in the room yesterday.
I
when
saw you in
Donald
your
Trump
MAGA
was
hat,
speaking.
yes.
Yes, I've got a MAGA hat. There's a lot of great merch on sale in DC right now. And I was in the room and the atmosphere was electric. Thousands of people from all over America had travelled a long way to get there. And this was to celebrate the victory. And Donald Trump used the opportunity to set out the agenda for the future. And it's an incredibly inspiring one that we sorely need here in the UK. It's based on secure borders. He set out there that he's going to be taking rapid and significant action on the first day. You know, he's not going to wait weeks or months. He's going to move very quickly on the southern border. In fact, as part of the rally, he put up a chart to show the numbers of illegal migrants into the country, and it is staggering that the numbers do fall, during his first presidency, and they steadily and exponentially rise under the Biden presidency. So it is a problem that has got worse categorically and emphatically under Joe Biden.
I believe they reckon something like 10 to 11 million illegal migrants arriving in America under the Biden administration for 4 years, which is quite extraordinary, isn't it? Well, exactly. It wasn't just about borders. It was net zero, wasn't it? There was tackling, the DEI madness and trans madness, recognising two genders. Yeah, because that's all there are. Drill, baby, drill. I mean, there's so much of this stuff. And, killing people, you work for a federal government, you're in the office, you're not working from home anymore. All of this stuff. I mean, this is music to a lot of, certainly my audience and my ears. Do you think there's any chance that any of this is going to rub off on the government we've now got?
I agree with you, Julia. It is music to my ears, and it's a glimmer of hope of what is possible in the West right now. I fear, speaking to Americans at that rally last night, many of them were really relieved and grateful that they've survived the last 4 years of Biden, and that their prayers have been answered, and now that there's a new chapter which is starting for America. Unfortunately, I think we're going through that same process, and a few years later, I think we've got a chapter now of 4 or 5 years of, recession, weak borders, woke takeover, and weakness in our leaders. And frankly, this Labour government has got off to a very bad start in terms of their relationship with the Americans. I can't think of a worse diplomatic relationship in our history, actually, which is harmful to the UK national interest. So I wish I could say, yes, we're going to, I can bring back some of this spirit to the UK right now. We can get going with it. But unfortunately, I think the reality is we've got a few more years to go.
Well, absolutely. Well, that said, I know you fought a valiant battle against a lot of the madness when you were in government, Suella Braverman, but your lot allowed this to happen over 14 years. You lot in the Tories, you're just as much to blame. I mean, Labour have put it on steroids, but I mean, you mentioned about the diplomatic relationship. I mean, it's very interesting. For the first time, this is totally unprecedented. World leaders being invited to the inauguration, various sort of right wingers that Donald Trump likes. Although he did invite the Chinese president, who hasn't attended, which I thought was quite extraordinary. But Viktor Orban's invited, but not Keir Starmer or Emmanuel Macron, which is quite interesting. Liz Truss is there, Boris Johnson, former Prime Ministers, you and others. Now, our own Talk TV's Alex Phillips is invited over to various parties, having a great time out there with our MAGA hat on. In terms of, we've got a foreign secretary who called Donald Trump, KKK Nazi sympathiser, says he shouldn't even be allowed in the country. We've got a prime minister who, clearly disapproves of Donald Trump, trying to make nicey, appointing Peter Mandelson, Lord Mandelson, to be our ambassador in Washington. What do you make of that decision?
Listen, I think Peter Mandelson will end up being an irrelevance. He's not, it would be great if the reports were true and Trump were going to veto it. Speaking to people here on the ground and in the Republicans, I'm not sure that's going to happen. But I think that Peter Mandelson will have zero impact in terms of promoting British interests here. He's a poor choice of ambassador. He's got a history of hostility towards the president. And ultimately, I think the president knows that there are other avenues to the UK. He's got better relationships with other politicians, and I think he knows where his bread is buttered, and it's not with this government's Labour Party.
It doesn't appear to be. And just finally, obviously one of the things that we're told we could see executive order on is tariffs. Mexico, Canadians, the biggest trading partners with America, but China, but possibly also Europe and indeed the UK. How fearful are you that we could see US tariffs on British goods, and how confident are you that we may, who knows, manage at some point to get a trade deal?
I would love a trade deal with the Americans. We have a very fulsome trading relationship, and businesses in the UK and in the US only benefit from a free trade agreement. I think the reality of tariffs is that they are leverage. And if you look at how Donald Trump used tariffs in his first presidency, he did so in a way to exercise political capital, uses political capital in his diplomatic efforts, and I think it can be very, very effective from an American point of view. I think that we need to take Donald Trump seriously. America is back, frankly, and that is a good thing for the UK overall. It's a good thing for the West, and it's a good thing for the world in terms of our global security. We have to work hard to consolidate our relationship. I'm fearful that this government will achieve very little in that respect, but it's incumbent on those of us who do have good relationships to make the most of them with the Americans.
Very much in agreement on that. Suella Braverman, a former Home Secretary, over in DC, a very cold DC, that inauguration ceremony taking place indoors. Very rare that it does that. I think one of Reagan's inaugurations was indoors in the Capitol building, but attending, no doubt, all of those balls and parties later on. Suella Braverman, thank you very much for joining us. Sam Armstrong, though, in a warm studio instead, back here in the UK. I want to talk about Southport with you more, but I also want to talk more about Trump. Do you think that, again, is there any chance that any of this is going to dribble down to us and we're actually going to see sanction, or do you think we're just going to have doubling down by these utterly incompetents we've got in number 10 right now?
I think more of the same. Keir Starmer only knows how to govern one way, and that is as the North London lawyer that he is. That's who his friends are, that's his culture, that's his
We're going to be forced to watch America booming.
Look,
and we're going to have to sit here just literally stuck with legs in the mud, like we're in quicksand.
Julia, elections have consequences, and the people of this country voted for Keir Starmer to be Prime Minister.
Well, they voted for the Tories not to be in office, is what they voted for.
Such is the way of our political system. Elections matter.
I always say, I'd have compulsory voting. You know my view on that one. Must come back to Southport, though, and that extraordinary breaking news in the last hour that Axel Ruda-Cabana has pleaded guilty to all charges in relation to these Southport stabbings in July last year at a Taylor Swift-themed dance class, including 3 murder charges, 10 attempted murder charges involving 8 children and 2 adults, possession of a knife and possession of a deadly poison ricin and an Al-Qaeda training manual. As you were saying earlier, Sam, I mean, it is extraordinary that we didn't know about the... ricin and Al-Qaeda manual. Oh, does that make it terror-related? No, this is not being related to terrorism offence whatsoever. We didn't know for months that there had been ricin found and an Al-Qaeda training manual found. Why did we not know for months? There's no way in the sodding world that the police didn't have that. Now, we were told by the Prime Minister this is not related to terror. Categorically. Was he lied to? Was the Home Secretary lied to? Who lied to who? Because someone lied to the British people about that.
Yes, the questions are numerous. Let's start from the beginning. Firstly, when did the government, particularly Yvette Cooper, the Home Secretary, and the Prime Minister, learn of this terror connection? Secondly, did that come before the Prime Minister gave the press conference to the nation in which he deliberately poured cold water on any connection of Terrorlink? If so, what was his purpose in withholding that information from the public? Why was the decision made to disclose this information so late? Why have there been continual efforts to say that the terror connection, the terror charges, bear no relation to the murder of 3 young girls? What information, if any, has still not been provided to the public? What is it? When can we know it? Look, we have had weeks and weeks and weeks of argument about whether there needs to be an inquiry about grooming gangs. Spoiler, yes. But here's the thing. I think there needs to be an inquiry about the information that came out in this case.
And none of that is in relation to contempt of court. Like this is stuff that we would have every right to know.
There were extraordinary details about this case provided to the public. We were told the birthplace of this offender. That information is never given. Never given. We all know that telling us he was from Cardiff was a deliberate attempt to misdirect the public as to the nature of this offender. That information would never normally be given. So we know that the government was prepared to do unusual things. The Prime Minister gave a press conference. The Prime Minister doesn't give press conferences about charges.
Exactly. I couldn't possibly get involved, surely, what he would normally say. But this is the thing. I mean, and again, people say, well, he's British. Yes, he was British born. He was born in Cornwall. That is the case. However, we also know that in terms of terror offences in this country, a large number of terror offences and terror charges are brought against people, not that there were terror charges brought in this case, but brought against people who are born in this country of migrants. I'm sorry, this is the case. This is often the case. So it was relevant. His background was relevant, although his background, was from Rwanda. It wasn't from the Middle East or a Muslim country, largely Muslim, because Rwanda, of course, largely Christian. But it is just fascinating. They thought this, but also I was thinking, there's an awful lot of people who are currently behind bars right now. Now, some of them did some terrible things, and I don't think there's any excuse for anyone to be throwing, stuff at bricks at the police or trying to set fire to an asylum hostel. No, I'm sorry, you did commit crimes, but people who wrote, supposedly hurty tweets, and people who pleaded guilty that were, I think, wrongly advised to plead guilty, who were threatened. Well, you're going to basically languish in jail for months unless you plead guilty. Now, people are serving 2-year, 3-year sentences for saying things about this case before there was this, but basically saying, this is a terror case, But it was. It is terror related.
And here's why that is so serious. In this country, you have the right to know all of the evidence against you, that helps the prosecution case against you, and that helps you. It was known to the authorities about this man's terror connections. There were individuals prosecuted, arrested, charged, convicted, for whom the information that this man was a terrorist was directly relevant to the charges brought against them. They were not told about
They were stirring up they were stirring up racial hatred and things by claiming it was terrorist. But every right-thinking person will believe that it was.
And look, that failure of disclosure means that there was a deliberate attempt on the state to withhold information against someone and saw them convicted. That is a miscarriage of justice. That is precisely the same thing we saw in the post office scandal cases. That is wrong. That is improper. And for a government led by a bunch of North London lawyers, you would think that they want to take some interest in the fact that there may have been not huge amounts, but a number, several miscarriages of justice on free speech grounds against a number of individuals in this country. That happened this year under this government, and there needs to be an inquiry to get to the bottom of each and every one of these cases.
Absolutely. All very, very good questions. Very much appreciate that. Apologies. I'd love to hear your thoughts on all this. Do get in touch. 0344 499 1000. Promise we'll get you, of course, before 1 o'clock. Lots of messages coming in about Donald Trump as well. Up next, we are going to be talking just very briefly about another topic, and that is the benefit system. But we will come back in, apologies, in just a few moments. This is Talk, the home of common sense.
Government borrowing costs hit a 27-year high, and the pound is taking a pounding. Gloomy economic data is expected to show inflation and growth are off course.
Let me ask again, and can you please be clear? Will Rachel Reeves be your Chancellor for the duration of this Parliament?
Rachel Reeves is doing a fantastic job. She has my full confidence. She has the full confidence of the entire party.
Can Rachel Reeves hold on as Chancellor?
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Very good afternoon to you. This is Talk, the home of common sense. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. Obviously, news dominated today by what is going on in Washington, D.C., what happened in Israel and Gaza yesterday, but also now the extraordinary situation in the Liverpool Crown Court with Axel Ruda-Cabana pleading guilty to all charges on the first day of his trial related to that knife attack in Southport last July. Extraordinary scenes. We'll come back to that. Welcome your thoughts on that as well. 0344 499 1000. Those reporting restrictions for ahead of a trial all gone. It's going to be sentenced on Thursday. Love to hear your thoughts, in particular about the information we, the public, were given about the charges against him and how long it took to find out about ricin and the Al-Qaeda manual. Do get in touch. 0344 499 1000. We'll get to more of your calls on Trump as well. Just want to turn on to one other topic that's been in the news in the last 24 hours. And this is a new report looking at the extraordinary incentives that people face for, basically for going onto sickness benefits. Report from peers in the House of Lords looking at the incentives that the benefits system has these days. Basically say it incentivises workers to say they are sick. They get more money that way. Well, let's talk about this with Sophia Warringer. She's Deputy Policy Director at the Centre for Social Justice. Very good afternoon to you, Sophia.
Good afternoon.
Thanks for joining us. I'm afraid we've not got much time, obviously, with all this breaking news. But basically, their peers are saying, look, in this report that, if you're eligible to claim health-related benefits, you can basically double your income. People are self-diagnosing.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a huge issue, and the peers are right to put their finger on it. And let's not forget some of the costs involved with this. Health-related benefits set to reach 100 billion by the end of this Parliament, forecasted to be 3% of GDP. That's a cost the country can't afford. And I think what's interesting in the last couple of weeks and months is that this has become less of a right-left issue. And in fact, more people who are classically on the left are trying to start to question this narrative of what is going on with the mental health of the nation. We've had Tony Blair, former Prime Minister, saying the ups and downs of normal life are being seen as medical conditions in an unhelpful way. And I do think that the pendulum is shifting on this issue because we can't afford to pay the bills anymore. And as you said, the incentives in the system lie all in the wrong places. If you can double your income by being out of work and claiming sickness benefit in the long term, then people are going to move towards where those incentives lie.
Yeah, but that's the thing. People aren't stupid, they might be, frankly, swinging the lead, but they know they're going to get more benefits. And basically, once you're on these sickness benefits, you're on them for life.
Exactly, and that's what's been driving the problem. Is there has been an increase in the number of people applying for them, about a 20% increase, but the huge proportion is that people are not coming off them, and reassessments have really dropped off, which were paused during the COVID-19 pandemic but have not picked up again. So as you said, once people are put into this cohort of out of work for long-term sick, they're out of the conditionality of universal credit, which is in fact very good at getting people into work, and therefore unfortunately parked there. And that is therefore such a big hurdle for them to get back into work, not just in terms of the money incentives, but also emotionally and mentally, the feeling of having to get back into work after maybe years being out. It feels like something that's beyond people's reach. And the government recognise this as a problem, but unfortunately their Get Britain Working white paper is going to produce a consultation. There's further stages coming down in March. There's more detail coming. And I do think Number 10 have expressed their frustration about how slowly this problem is being gripped for the Work and Pensions Secretary. So there's a lot more work to be done to get this problem under control.
Well, again, the Tories didn't get to grips with any of this. They allowed this to explode. There's no reason to think that Labour are going to, although we simply cannot afford for them not to get a grip on it. So appreciate you joining us. Sophia Warren, Deputy Policy Director at the Centre for Social Justice think tank. Just a quick word from Sam Armstrong on this, and we are going to return to what's going on with Axel Rubicana and indeed in America as well. But it is just one of those things which is like, this is an ongoing story. I mean, looking at Donald Trump, you know, you're right, you're working in the office, we'll get rid of all the DI, all this madness, DOGE, Department of Government Efficiency under Elon Musk and things. And here we are going, oh, we've got like a few million people who are just pretending to be sick or you know, feel sad on a Monday so they can go, they think they've got a mental health problem. And I mean, it's an insult. It's an insult to people who genuinely are sick, who do need help, and it's an insult to all the people who are at work, getting through another day and having to pay for them.
It's also a very serious problem for Keir Starmer and Rachel Reeves. All of the money that they want to spend on all of their grand plans to keep up with the promises they made is getting sucked up by ever larger welfare spending problems. The Tories were having the same problem. Labour are going to have it. Until you deal with that, there's just going to be no money left for anything else.
Absolutely. Right, time is 12:33. We're going to take a very, very quick break. We're going to come back. We are going to be talking to Chris Phillips, former National Counter-Terrorism Security Officer, about the pleading guilty by Axel Rubicana to all charges in relation to the Southport attacks. And we're going to be taking your calls on Donald Trump and indeed on that extraordinary development in the Southport attack trial. This is Talk. We are the home of common sense.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Very good afternoon to you. This is Talk, the home of common sense. 12:36 is the time. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. Sam Armstrong is also with me. And obviously... extraordinary busy moving news day, but the development in the last hour at the Liverpool Crown Court in relation to the Southport attack trial. Extraordinary moment in court when Axel Rubicana charged with murder, attempted murder, possession of deadly poison ricin, an Al-Qaeda training manual and possession of a kitchen knife with a curved blade. Pleaded guilty on all charges to 3 counts of murder, 8 counts of attempted murder in relation to 8 other children who cannot be named. There's still a reporting restriction on that to protect those children's identities. And also the attempted murder of dance teacher Leanne Lucas and businessman Jonathan Hayes, who tried to, one of those incredibly brave, I mean, both of them incredibly brave, fighting their attacker off. Axel Ruda Cabana will be sentenced on Thursday. Now we're joined by Chris Phillips. He's former National Counter-Terrorism Security Officer, joins us on the show today. Chris, look, there's lots of people expecting that this trial would last, up to 4 to 6 weeks. Some reports this morning that actually he was going to offer no defence. He was silent at earlier court hearings and did not plead. The judge entered not guilty pleas on his behalf into the court. But how surprised are you that he did plead guilty to all charges?
I'm surprised in as much as he was clearly looking towards mental health issues as being his way out of this, the murder charges at least. I think probably
basically diminished responsibility, basically.
Yeah, exactly. Using a term like that to turn it into manslaughter or whatever. The simple fact is that he committed these offences, and it's his mindset that was the issue. This is a double-edged sword, clearly. It's great that the victims' families won't have to sit and listen to this man talk in the court, but of course they would have wanted to be there to see him plead guilty, I would imagine. But, it is a good day. And I think there's a lot of work to be done now for journalists to actually dig into this person and who he is, and actually some apologies to some politicians who came out with what was clearly the truth at the time.
Yeah, absolutely. But again, also, we often get less information, don't we, when we don't have the trial and we don't have the defence. We don't get to have that. I mean, we always get information that comes out as soon as there is either a guilty plea or a verdict of guilt. We now know that, again, we've seen these pictures. I have to say, I've always been infuriated about that. It's a photograph of this young man born in Britain, this Cardiff-born choir boy, and there's this angelic picture of him as a very young lad, not much older than the girls that he killed and attempted to kill. And then we finally started seeing the images of him, court sketches of him with sort of very mad, out of control hair, trying to cover his face with his sweatshirt, which he did in all of his court cases. But this angelic picture of him, many years younger than he actually was at the time of the case. But we now know, well, he wasn't angelic. We know he'd been diagnosed with an autism spectrum disorder, but he'd left high school in 2019 before moving to a specialist school. He had actually been expelled from, certainly excluded from school for a violent incident involving a hockey stick at some point. He'd shown violent behaviour at school. So again, we just get this impression, this image. First of all, it's just this young, Cardiff choir boy who's been arrested. Everyone stops saying nasty things. And then we learn far more. And I'm wondering whether we would have learnt more if the case had gone through the full court process.
Yeah, I do. You're right. However, I think there'll be a lot of people coming out and saying what they know about this man, and it won't interfere with the trial. Yeah. This man has got a long history, I imagine, of violence in some form. We'll find out. But clearly, to do the offences that he's committed, he's also clearly got some interest in terrorism. He's downloaded the terrorism handbook.
As you do.
And yeah, exactly. And also making ricin. Now, ricin is an incredibly dangerous poison. You'll remember it was first used on the streets in London in Georgy Markov with the umbrella. This stuff really kills. We've had police officers killed because of it over the last 20 years. This was a very, very nasty man, and I think we'll find out just how nasty in the weeks ahead.
Well, indeed. And look, you've got your special, expertise as a former National Counter-Terrorism Security Officer. We were told again and again, this isn't terrorism. Many people are behind bars right now for things that they wrote at the time. People forced into pleading guilty, I think, by very bad, threats are basically going to be on remand for, 6 months, a year. You may as well plead guilty, and then getting sentenced to a couple of years behind bars for some words they wrote. Now, some of them, I'm sorry, banged to rights, inciting inciting violence. That is a crime. Others, I think, really very tenuous. But a lot of it was related, like this was a terror attack on this country. Yet another one, No, we were told by the authorities it wasn't. The Prime Minister made a statement, extraordinarily unusual situation with a live case, making a statement that this wasn't terror related. People have been, sent to jail for claiming it was, on the basis that is somehow stirring up racial tensions. We're told even now by Merseyside Police, their last official statement on this, that even though they found a load of deadly poison ricin used by terrorists and the possession of an Al-Qaeda training manual in his home. Well, did they find it last October or did they find it the day they searched his home? We weren't given that information. We were hoping we were going to find that out in the trial. But how on earth can they say there is no terrorism aspect to this crime when he had this Al-Qaeda training manual? The actions of stabbing children, having fun, particularly girls, is absolutely part of the modus operandi of Islamist terrorism. The threats against the Taylor Swift concert in Vienna, the attack at the Manchester Arena, the Ariana Grande concert, attacks on young girls having fun, living their lives. This is absolutely the terrorist playbook, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's a bit embarrassing for those people that did come out and say it's not terrorism, because whichever way you want to play it, he's committed a terrorist act by downloading that book, and I think he's pleaded guilty to that. So this is a terrorism related, and to some extent, I can understand why you would want to try to prevent riots on the streets of the UK, but we have to. There's a balance, and there's a balance of getting the right information out to say, yeah, unfortunately, this was a terrorist attack. He's in custody, and we're doing everything we can to, we'll prosecute him. But people do need the truth,
yes,
as well as however bad that truth may be, we need to be told the truth.
Indeed, it's the willingness to not give us the truth, to distort the truth that actually led to so much of the anger, that people felt they were being lied to. And again, people have been lied to about the grooming gangs for years, been lied to about many other cases for years. No wonder people are so mistrustful. But even like the in Cardiff, what on earth did they think we could put from that? The lines going around the internet, they try to start up people, they have to. But often now people do trust the internet more than they trust the authorities. And why? But it obviously makes some sort of defence. But he's British, so it can't be. But look, you in the counter-terrorism with a sort of line of a terrorism and inside terror attacks.
About that, there's no argument about that. A terrorist is a terrorist. I think there is an issue. I have to say there is an issue around motives, and you have to prove motives in order to, why did you kill someone? Was it because you didn't like them, or was it because you didn't like them and you want to scare the rest of the country?
Yeah.
And if this man wasn't saying a lot at the time, I can imagine there was some doubt. However, as soon as they did,
really. I'm sorry.
As soon as they saw this book on his computer, then really they're ricin. It tells a story that normal people just don't make ricin.
I mean, most people wouldn't have a clue. But even looking up how to make it is a crime, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, there are lots of recipes on the internet and things, but actually making the ricin itself, that's a criminal offence.
Yeah.
But the simple fact is actually downloading the terrorism handbook, that is a terrorist offence.
That is literally a terrorism offence.
Guilty of that.
Yeah, absolutely.
He's pleaded guilty to that.
In terms of what we're going to see on Thursday, the sentencing, he's pleaded guilty to all charges, incredibly serious charges. Do you think he ever comes out of prison not in a wooden box, or will our incredibly mad justice system mean that one day he will walk free?
Well, this is one of those cases that everyone would be calling quite rightly for the death penalty, isn't it? This is a stone bonker death penalty sentence for these offences. We're not going to get that. We're going to get a whole life sentence, I imagine, and. I've seen time and time again people being released who should never be back on the streets, who are still radicalised. I just have no faith, I'm afraid, in a criminal justice system keeping these people locked up forever. I mean, he's not going to have a great time in prison, I can tell you that, particularly, if he goes to certain prisons, and until he joins the Islamic gang that we have in our prisons as well. So, no, he should never be released, but I don't have any faith.
No, I'm with you all the way on that. Chris Phillips, really appreciate you joining us. He's former National Counter-Terrorism Security Officer. You'll know him well, a friend of the show. Sam Armstrong, listening to all of that, joining me in the studio, what do you want to say?
Very, very bad news, I'm afraid. Under the law, because Axel Rudy Cabana was under the age of 21 at the time he committed this offence, he cannot be sentenced to a whole life tariff. The reality is...
Oh, can I just... Oh, my God.
The reality is...
He was a child. He was a Cardiff choir boy.
The reality is this man will once more either walk the streets of this country, or indeed it's possible he might have his citizenship stripped.
Well, no, he's born in this country, isn't he? So
but it's theoretically possible if he holds Rwandan citizenship that he could be stripped of his UK citizenship. But the truth of it is he will get a determinate sentence, and there will come a point, potentially not that long, potentially in this man's 40s, in which once more he is walking the streets of this country.
The bleeding heart liberals in the parole system go, well, you know, he's shown he's definitely very remorseful.
Everybody in this country that I know of, that I've ever met, will believe that this man should be locked up and the key should be thrown away.
Just nothing to discuss,
Our justice system will not deliver it on Thursday.
Part of the deal of removing the death penalty, I don't approve of the death penalty. I mean, I can't say I'd be out on the streets objecting to it if it was for this man, but I'd be happily at home going, oh, well, never mind. But genuinely, the deal was for the British public, they would remove the death penalty, but people would have life sentences. And when you give somebody life sentence, that is supposed to mean life.
In this man's case...
And he's so young.
It just won't. He will spend...
He will never
the
not be a
majority
danger.
of his life out of prison. Period.
This country is insane. This country is... In America, he'd be serving like sort of a 300-year sentence, wouldn't he? And they've got a lot of things wrong with their system, but yeah, guys, your thoughts? 0344 499 1000. Get in touch about, lots of calls coming in on Donald Trump, lots of calls coming in on this as well. If you want to have your say, give us a call, 0344 499 1000, before we hand over to Ian Collins. This is Talk, the home of common sense.
I hope that my Prime Minister didn't sign on to a deal that doesn't have future agreements between the US and Israel about the Islamic Republic of Iran or the future of fighting against Hamas in Gaza, and perhaps positive things about normalizing ties with Saudi Arabia. I hope that that's part of the deal, because otherwise This is not a good deal.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is indeed Talk, the home of common sense. Thank you very much indeed for joining me. Just if you are tuning in, the Southport attack trial, incredible developments in the last hour or so. Axel Rudikabana has pleaded guilty to all charges on the first day, including the murder of 3 girls, attempted murder of 8 other girls, attempted murder of a dance teacher and a businessman who attempted to save them, and also possession of ricin, knife and the Al-Qaeda manual. But don't worry, guys. Definitely not terror-related, definitely not. Lots of your calls coming in on Donald Trump, because we've been focusing lots on Donald Trump today ahead of his inauguration, which begins in a few hours' time. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call on that. Ashley is on the line from London. Hello, Ashley.
Hi, good afternoon.
What do you want to say?
I was going to say, last night I was driving home and listening to, unfortunately, another channel because you guys aren't on.
What were you thinking?
And that you've got these hysterical people about how the world's going to end.
I know.
Donald Trump coming in. And also the fact that, not the fact that he's democratically elected, he's had a massive majority. And don't get me wrong, not my favourite person. And I think, he's about himself. However, what I would say is the speech he made last night, you played it a couple of times today. Is it not just what everyone wants to hear? Forget colour, religion, all the rest of it. That is what, as a citizen of any country, you'd expect your government to say.
We have borders, but hire on merit, and have affordable, plentiful, cheap energy. I mean, what's not to like?
Well, there isn't, and I just sit there and I think say to myself, well, look, my hope is that he forms as a regulator against Keir Starmer in the sense that everything he thinks about doing, and every time a silly idea comes up by Miliband, that they go, oh, is Trump going to like this? What's he going to say? Right? Maybe we need to sit down and go through it again and make it a little bit more palatable. Right? So the next 4 years, I kind of see for myself, and it's just maybe my madness, that actually maybe it's going to help us a little bit.
I think our lot are going to double down because they don't care what the general public thinks. They think we're all ghastly racists and bigots, and that they think he's KKK. I think genuinely, we're just going to become more and more irrelevant. I think Donald Trump won't care. He didn't bother inviting. I think he's invited some world leaders. This is unusual that they do this, but he didn't bother inviting Keir Starmer because he doesn't like him, doesn't rate him, and our economy is going to go into the dogs, along with Germany's and France's. We're not going to matter. That's my worry.
Yeah.
On a happy note, on a Monday.
Oh, dear God. Why did I phone, eh?
No, I'm just saying, that's all right, that's right. Actually, I do appreciate your call. I hope you're right, mate. I hope you're right, Ashley in London. Thank you for that. Peter is also... Oh, everyone's calling from London today. Hello, Peter.
Hello, Julia.
Hello, my love.
Can I just make 2 very quick points? Yeah, these lefties having a meltdown about Trump. I mean, eventually it's going to benefit them, isn't it? So whatever happens, they're still going to hate Trump. My second point is Gaza. There will be no peace in Gaza until they get into the schools in Gaza and treat those and basically de-radicalise the children.
I don't think that's going to happen. I mean, you definitely need to get UNRWA out of there, that's for sure. I just don't see it happening, but it would be great if they could.
No, well, exactly, but I can't see it coming. I mean, why can't these leaders see it? Benjamin Netanyahu, time and time again. I mean, you got Douglas Murray saying it. You got Mossad Youssef, the son of You know that guy.
Yeah. No, but Douglas Murray, about everything that's going on in the West right now, everything that's happened in Israel. Douglas Murray has been warning about all of this for years, and he's been right about all of this for years. Do you think Donald Trump's going to have a good impact on America? Do you think it's going to have a good impact on Britain?
Yeah, I'm absolutely. Yeah, I'm going to have my bottle of rum beside me and have a few. Yeah. So I'll be looking into it on Talk, obviously. And Julia, on that point about Douglas Murray, can't you have him on Talk? No.
He's been on many times. He's been on lots. The trouble is, he's in New York a lot. So for my show, it's a bit difficult in terms of timings. That's the only issue. No, good friends with the man. I've got to be honest with you. I'd have him on every day if I could. I absolutely would. Thank you very much indeed for that. I'm hoping we might have a call. Okay. We got Peter in Yorkshire. Peter's on the line. I think I'm talking about Axel. Hello, Peter.
Hi, Julia. Hi.
What do you want to say, my love? Just got about 1 minute.
Very quickly, possible motivation for someone who's been radicalised. His classic mould would fit the target to be radicalised by Amjen Chowdhury. Amjen Chowdhury, after 20 years of investigations into him, was found guilty on the Wednesday before this offence happened. His sentence was put off for 1 week. This attack took place on the Tuesday, the day before Amjen Chowdhury was given a life-term sentence. My question is there a link in the terrorism to Amjen Chowdhury?
Very interesting. That's certainly worth looking into. I mean, what did you make? Were you surprised? I mean, we're all surprised by the guilty charge, but given some of the people languishing behind bars right now, basically saying, "Well, this is a terror attack," the police and the Prime Minister go, "Oh, it's not a terror attack." I mean, how could it not have been a terror attack?
Disgraceful. Knew from the first, like many other people, we knew more or less straight away that there was going to be these links. Definitely covered up. And if there is a link to Amjen Chowdhury, that certainly would have highlight that. And they will know, because the services will know exactly.
Yeah, absolutely, they will. Peter, thank you very much indeed. Just some breaking news coming out of the States. I understand that Joe Biden, on his final day in office, has issued pardons to Anthony Fauci, Liz Cheney, members of the J6 investigation committee in the Senate. I mean, that's quite fascinating, isn't it? Obviously ahead of whether or not there would be charges